Strength defines worth. Power commands respect. That's what the pack elders whispered to Celeste Anderson every day of her miserable existence. But when you're the only wolfless daughter in a bloodline of alphas, you learn that weakness isn't just pitied, it's punished. And punishment, in the world of shifters, means death. Chapter 1. The Wolfless Disgrace. The trial grounds reeked of wet earth and blood, a combination that made Celeste's stomach churn as she was dragged through the crowd by iron chains. Her wrists burned where the silver-lined metal bit into her skin, a constant reminder that even restrained, she was considered dangerous. Funny, really. How could someone without a wolf be dangerous? Make way for the traitor! Guard Captain Roman Terry's voice boomed across the packed clearing, and the sea of shifters parted with disgusted snarls and hostile glares. Celeste kept her eyes down, her dark hair falling forward to shield her face from the hatred radiating from every direction. She'd learned years ago that eye contact only invited more cruelty. The Wolfless didn't get to look their betters in the eye. The Northern Summit Pack had gathered in full force for her trial. Over 300 shifters crowded into the sacred grounds where pack justice was administered. The ancient oak trees formed a natural amphitheater, their gnarled branches twisting overhead like arthritic fingers pointing accusingly at the sky. At the center stood the Judgment Stone, a massive granite slab stained dark with the blood of countless accused. And beyond it, on an elevated platform of carved wood, sat the pack's leadership. Her family, Alpha Greg Donnelly, her father, occupied the central throne, his massive frame radiating the kind of power that made lesser wolves submit without a single word. His silver-streaked hair caught the afternoon light, and his ice-blue eyes, so like her own, refused to meet her gaze. He'd always been good at pretending she didn't exist. To his right sat Luna Diane Fleming, Celeste's stepmother, draped in white furs that made her look ethereal and pure. Her red lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her cold green eyes. She'd worn white to Celeste's trial. How perfectly symbolic. And beside Diane, practically glowing with vindication, was Celeste's half-sister, Natasha Gorman, 22 years old, blessed with a wolf so powerful she'd earned her own pack position at 18, and currently preening like a peacock as the crowd murmured admiringly. Her golden hair was braided with silver thread, and her dress a deep crimson that matched the pack's colors hugged every curve. Everything about Natasha screamed perfection, power, privilege, everything Celeste would never be. Celeste Anderson. Alpha Greg's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade through flesh, formal and detached. You stand accused of conspiring with rogues, of betraying pack secrets to our enemies, and of plotting the assassination of pack leadership. How do you plead? The words hit her like physical blows. Conspiring with rogues, betrayal, assassination. Celeste's voice came out as a croak, her throat dry from 3 days in the dungeons without water. She swallowed hard and tried again, forcing strength into her tone. I'm innocent. I would never. She lies. Natasha's voice rang out, clear and sharp. She rose from her seat. One delicate hand pressed to her chest in mock distress. I saw her myself, meeting with the rogue leader at the eastern border. She handed him documents, maps of our territory, guard rotations, everything. The crowd erupted in snarls and shouts. Traitor. Wolfless scum. Should have been exiled years ago. Celeste's heart hammered against her ribs. That's not true. Natasha, why are you— Don't you dare speak my daughter's name, wolfless wretch. Luna Diane's voice was soft, gentle even, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. She dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, the picture of maternal grief. For 24 years, this pack has shown you mercy. We fed you, sheltered you, allowed you to remain despite your deficiency. And this is how you repay our kindness? With treason? I didn't do anything. Celeste's chains rattled as she jerked forward, desperation clawing at her chest. Father, please, you have to believe me. I've never even been to the eastern border. I've been working in the pack kitchens every day. You can ask. The kitchen staff have been questioned, Roman Terry interrupted, his scarred face impassive. None recall seeing you on the day in question, because Natasha had made sure of that. Celeste knew exactly how this worked. Natasha wanted something, Natasha got it, and anyone who stood in her way either fell in line or disappeared. The kitchen workers knew better than to contradict the Alpha's golden daughter. "My sister tells the truth," Natasha continued, descending from the platform with the grace of a dancer. She moved through the crowd like a queen among peasants, her power making lesser wolves bow their heads in submission. When she reached Celeste, she leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper only Celeste could hear. "You should have stayed invisible, little sister. But you had to go and catch his attention, didn't you?" His attention. Celeste's blood ran cold as understanding crashed over her. 3 weeks ago, the Alpha King's surprise visit to their territory, King Harold Walls himself, touring the northern packs to assess their strength and loyalty. And Celeste, stupid, foolish Celeste, had been in the wrong place at the wrong time carrying linens through the main hall when the king's procession arrived. She dropped everything, of course, bowed so low her forehead touched the floor. But when she dared glance up, the Alpha King had been staring directly at her with those unsettling golden eyes. An expression she couldn't read on his ancient, scarred face. "Interesting," he'd murmured, just that one word, before moving on. But Natasha had noticed. Natasha noticed everything. "This is about him," Celeste breathed, horror and realization mixing into something toxic. "You're doing this because you're a traitor," Natasha said loudly, pulling back with an expression of disgust perfectly crafted for their audience. "And traitors must be punished." The crowd roared its agreement. Alpha Greg raised one massive hand, and silence fell instantly. "The evidence is clear. Testimony has been given. The law demands justice." His eyes finally met Celeste's, and for just a moment so brief she might have imagined it, something flickered in those icy depths. Regret? Shame? But then it was gone, buried beneath the cold mask of Alpha authority. "Celeste Anderson, you are hereby sentenced to death by combat. You will face 3 challenges. Survive them all, and you will be granted exile. Fail even one." He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what failure meant. Death by combat, for a Wolfless Omega. They might as well have sentenced her to immediate execution. "The first challenge," Luna Diane announced, rising gracefully from her seat, "will be against our finest young warrior." She gestured. And from the crowd emerged a massive male shifter, easily 6'5", with shoulders like a bull and eyes that promised pain. "Kevin Schaefer has volunteered to defend the pack's honor." Kevin Schaefer, the pack's champion fighter, undefeated in 73 consecutive duels. This wasn't a trial. It was theater, a public execution dressed up as justice. "You don't have to do this," Celeste said, her voice barely above a whisper as she looked at her father one last time. "Please. I'm your daughter." "My daughter has a wolf," Alpha Greg replied, his voice hard as stone. "You are simply a mistake that lived too long." The words shattered something inside her that had been cracked for years. All the hope she'd secretly harbored, all the desperate belief that maybe, someday, her father might see her worth it all crumbled to dust. Roman Terry unlocked her chains, and Celeste stumbled forward onto the judgment stone, her legs weak from days of imprisonment. Kevin Schaefer moved to the opposite side, already shifting, his bones cracking and reforming as thick brown fur erupted across his body. Within seconds, a massive wolf stood where the man had been, lips pulled back to reveal teeth like daggers. Celeste stood there in her tattered dress, barefoot and trembling, with nothing but her human fragility to protect her. The crowd began to chant, "Shift, shift, shift." They wanted a show. They wanted to see her try and fail, to watch her humiliation one final time, before Kevin tore her throat out. "I can't shift," Celeste said quietly, the words swallowed by the roaring crowd. Luna Diane's amplified voice cut through the noise. "The trial begins. Now." Kevin lunged. Celeste dove sideways on pure instinct, hitting the stone hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Claws raked across her shoulder, tearing through fabric and skin like paper. Hot blood soaked her dress as she scrambled away, her mind screaming at her body to move, move, move. She'd spent her whole life learning to survive without a wolf. Learning to be fast, clever, unpredictable. The pack had dismissed her as worthless. But weakness had its advantages. No one expected the wolfless girl to know how to fight dirty. Kevin pounced again, and this time Celeste was ready. She grabbed a fistful of the dirt and rock dust covering the judgment stone and flung it directly into the wolf's eyes. Kevin yelped, shaking his massive head, temporarily blinded. Celesta ran. Not away, there was nowhere to go. The crowd formed an impenetrable wall, but toward the edge of the stone where generations of accused had bled out. Where the ground was slick and treacherous with old blood and moss, Kevin charged after her, powerful legs eating up the distance in seconds. But when he tried to stop at the stone's edge, his paws slipped on the slick surface. He went down hard, claws scrabbling for purchase. The crowd gasped. Some even laughed. Celeste didn't hesitate. She grabbed a sharp rock from the ground, one of the stones used to mark trial boundaries, and brought it down on Kevin's front left paw with every ounce of strength she possessed. Bone crunched. The wolf howled. Impossible, someone breathed. She's fighting back. Another whispered. Wolfless trash, should know her place. But Celeste wasn't done. While Kevin thrashed in pain, she circled around behind him, looking for any advantage, any weakness. His back left leg, there was an old injury there. She'd heard the warriors talking about it in the kitchens. A scar from a rogue attack 2 years ago that had never fully healed. She kicked it. Hard. Kevin's leg buckled, and the massive wolf crashed sideways, crashing into the judgment stone with enough force to crack the ancient granite. The crowd fell silent, stunned. Celeste stood over the fallen warrior, her chest heaving, blood streaming down her arm from the shoulder wound. She knew she should finish it, pick up another rock, crush his skull, secure her victory in this first challenge. But she couldn't. Despite everything, despite the hatred and cruelty and injustice, she wasn't a killer. I yield. Kevin's voice was raw, half-human as he forced his shift back enough to speak. She wins. The silence stretched. No one moved, no one breathed. Then Alpha Greg's voice cut through the shock. First challenge. Complete. The crowd exploded into chaos, some cheering, some cursing, all of them disbelieving that the Wolfless Omega had actually survived. Celeste collapsed to her knees, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline and terror. She'd survived. She'd actually survived. But as she looked up at the platform where her family sat, she saw Natasha's face twisted with rage, beautiful features contorted into something ugly and vicious. And Celeste realized with cold certainty, the next challenge would be worse, so much worse. Chapter 2. The Riddle of Blood. The pack healers worked in silence, their hands cold and efficient as they stitched the gash across Celeste's shoulder. No painkillers, no gentle words, just needle and thread, pulling her torn flesh back together, while she bit down on a leather strap to keep from screaming. They dragged her to a holding pen beside the trial grounds, a cage barely large enough to stand in, with iron bars that reeked of silver and despair. Through the gaps, she could see the crowd milling about, placing bets on how long she'd survive the second challenge. Some were already collecting their losses from the first. 73 consecutive wins. Someone laughed nearby. And he gets beaten by a wolfless girl. Kevin's a disgrace. She got lucky, another voice countered. Won't happen twice. Whatever Trial Master Javier has planned. She's dead. Trial Master Javier Cohen. Celeste's blood ran cold at the name. Javier Cohen was ancient, older than Alpha Greg, older than most of the pack elders. He'd served as trial master for over 40 years, designing the challenges that separated the worthy from the condemned. And he was known for one thing above all else. His riddles were never what they seemed, and they were always fatal to those who couldn't solve them. Done, the healer grunted, snipping the last thread and stepping back without meeting Celeste's eyes. The woman gathered her supplies and left without another word, leaving Celeste alone in the cage with her throbbing shoulder and mounting dread. Through the bars, she watched the sun sink lower on the horizon. How long until the second challenge? Minutes? Hours? The pack seemed in no hurry, content to let her stew in fear while they drank and celebrated and pretended this was entertainment rather than murder. You surprised everyone today. Celeste's head snapped up. A figure stood just outside her cage, backlit by the fading sun so she couldn't make out features. But the voicemail, deep, with an accent that spoke of education and authority, was unfamiliar. The figure stepped closer, and Celeste's breath caught. He wasn't from her pack. His clothes marked him as foreign, dark leather and silver clasps, with a cloak that bore the symbol of the royal court. one of the Alpha King's men, but more than that, there was something about the way he moved, the way the air itself seemed to shift around him, that screamed power. This wasn't just any wolf. This was someone important. "Who are you?" Celeste asked, her voice hoarse. "Someone who finds himself intrigued." The man crouched down to her level, and finally she could see his face. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in a single glance. A scar ran from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, a mark of survival. "You fought without shifting, without a wolf's strength or speed or healing, and yet you won." "I got lucky," Celeste repeated the crowd's words, too tired for false modesty. "Luck?" The man's lips quirked. "You analyzed your opponent's weaknesses in seconds, used the environment to your advantage, fought smart instead of strong. That's not luck, girl. That's intelligence. And intelligence is far more dangerous than claws." Celeste studied him warily. "What do you want?" "To give you advice." He glanced over his shoulder, checking they were alone, then leaned closer to the bars. "The second challenge will be a riddle. Trial Master Javier is predictable in his patterns. He always uses ancient pack law as the foundation, always buries the answer in history and blood." "Why are you telling me this?" The man's expression shifted, becoming unreadable. "Let's say I have my reasons. Now listen carefully. When Javier gives you the riddle, don't answer immediately. Think about what he's not saying. The words he chooses matter less than the words he avoids." "That's not advice," Celeste said bitterly. "That's a fortune cookie." A surprised laugh escaped him. "You have fire. Good, you'll need it." He stood preparing to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Your sister, the golden one with hatred in her eyes, she's convinced the trial master to make this challenge personal. Whatever question he asks, it will be designed to destroy you even if you answer correctly." Celeste's stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" "Because I watched her pay him, quite generously actually." His dark eyes met hers. "Survive this, Celeste Anderson. The world needs more survivors who refuse to break." He vanished into the crowd before she could ask his name. 30 minutes later, Roman Terry came to collect her. "Time for round 2, the guard captain said, unlocking the cage with hands that weren't quite steady. Up close, Celeste could see the man was troubled, his jaw tight, his eyes refusing to meet hers. "For what it's worth, you fought well, better than any Wolfless should have been able to. Is that supposed to comfort me?" Roman's scarred face twisted. "No. Nothing about today is comforting." He locked shackles around her wrists. "Regular iron this time, not silver," and led her back toward the trial grounds. The crowd had grown. Word of her victory over Kevin Schaefer had spread, and now shifters from neighboring territories had arrived to witness the spectacle. Celeste could see wolves she didn't recognize, all watching her with curiosity and hunger, like she was an interesting specimen under glass. The judgment stone had been cleared and cleaned, the blood scrubbed away. In its center now stood a single wooden chair and a small table. On the table sat 3 objects, a silver dagger, a white rose, and a leather-bound book. And beside the table stood Trial Master Javier Cohen. He was smaller than Celeste expected, barely 5'6", thin as a reed, with wispy white hair and hands gnarled by age. But his eyes were sharp and cold, and when they fixed on her, Celeste felt like he could see straight through to her bones. "Celeste Anderson." Javier's voice was surprisingly strong for someone so ancient. "You have survived combat through trickery and luck, but the second challenge requires something you cannot fake. Knowledge. Specifically, knowledge of pack law, history, and blood." The crowd pressed closer, eager. "I will ask you 3 questions," Javier continued. "Answer all 3 correctly, and you pass to the final challenge. Fail even one," he gestured to the silver dagger on the table, "and you die, here, now, by your own hand. Forced suicide." Celeste's hands shook in their shackles. "Do you understand the terms?" "Yes." The word came out steadier than she felt. "Then we begin." Javier circled her slowly, his footsteps silent on the stone. "First question. According to the old laws established by the first packs, what is the one crime that cannot be forgiven? Not through combat, not through exile, not through death itself. Celeste's mind raced. The old laws, she'd studied them as a child, back when she still believed education might earn her father's respect. There were dozens of unforgivable crimes listed: killing a pack member, betraying secrets, harming pups. But the crime, the one above all others, the murder of one's true mate, Celeste answered. Because true mates are soul-bonded, to kill one is to damage your own soul beyond repair. The old laws say such a crime echoes through generations, cursing the bloodline itself. Silence. Then Javier nodded. Correct. The crowd murmured, some disappointed, some impressed. Second question. Javier picked up the white rose from the table, twirling it between his gnarled fingers. The White Rose Massacre occurred 300 years ago, when the Eastern Pacts betrayed the Northern Alliance during the War of Broken Bonds. How many packs were destroyed in the betrayal? Celeste's breath caught. This wasn't common knowledge, this was obscure history that only scholars studied. She'd only ever read about it because she'd spent years in the pack library, desperate for any escape from her miserable reality. 12 packs, she said carefully. The Eastern Pacts claimed it was 11, but they didn't count the Half Moon Pack because… She paused, remembering. Because the Half Moon Pack was composed entirely of Wolfless descendants, the Eastern Pacts didn't consider them a real pack. Javier's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Correct. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. 2 for 2. The Wolfless Omega was somehow succeeding where most educated warriors would have failed. On the platform, Natasha's face had gone pale. Luna Diane leaned over to whisper something urgent in Alpha Greg's ear. Third question. Javier set down the rose and picked up the leather-bound book. This is the pack registry, which records every bloodline in the Northern Summit Pack for the last 500 years. I'm going to open to a random page, point to a name, and you will tell me that wolf's greatest accomplishment and how they died. It was impossible. There were thousands of names in that book. Tens of thousands. No one could memorize. Javier opened the book. His finger stabbed down at a page. Everett Taylor, he read. Born 1847. Died 1889. Tell me his story. Celeste's mind went blank. Everett Taylor. The name meant nothing to her. She'd never heard it, never read it, never. Wait. The stranger's words echoed in her memory. Think about what he's not saying. The words he chooses matter less than the words he avoids. Javier had said he'd open to a random page. But there was nothing random about this trial. Natasha had paid him to make it personal. And what was more personal then? You didn't open to a random page, Celeste said slowly, her heart pounding. You opened to my bloodline. Everett Taylor was my great-great-grandfather. Javier's finger twitched. The first sign of reaction she'd seen from him. And you chose him specifically, Celeste continued, pieces falling into place. Because his story is meant to destroy me even if I answer correctly, isn't it? Answer the question, girl. Celeste closed her eyes, reaching back through fragmented memories. Her grandmother had told her stories before she died. Stories about the family, about their history. She'd mentioned an Everett once, briefly, before Alpha Greg had forbidden any talk of the past. Everett Taylor was an Omega, Celeste said quietly. Born weak, ridiculed by the pack. But he had a gift for strategy. During the Rogue Wars, when our pack was surrounded and outnumbered 3-1, Everett designed a defense that saved everyone. He used the terrain, set traps, and turned the rogues' strength against them. She opened her eyes, meeting Javier's cold stare. His greatest accomplishment was saving the pack that despised him. And he died. She swallowed hard. He died by execution. Because after he saved them, the Alpha at the time couldn't stand that an Omega had succeeded where the warriors had failed, so they accused him of treason. And they killed him for it. The silence that fell was absolute, just like you're trying to kill me now. Celeste finished. For a long moment, Javier didn't move. Then, slowly, he closed the book. You're clever, girl. Too clever. His voice was soft, almost regretful. You've answered all 3 questions correctly. By pack law, you passed to the 3rd challenge. Relief nearly brought Celeste to her knees. But, Javier continued. And Celeste's blood froze. There is one additional law I must observe. The law of blood truth. No, 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 no. When a wolf demonstrates knowledge of ancient crimes within their own bloodline, Javier recited, his words formal and damning, they must prove that knowledge was gained through proper education, and not through, he paused dramatically, forbidden blood magic, the practice of communing with dead ancestors to steal their memories. The crowd erupted in snarls and accusations. Blood magic. Unnatural. Abomination. Celeste's mind reeled. Blood magic didn't exist, it was myth, superstition, stories told to scare pups. But it didn't matter what was real. It mattered what the pack believed. And Javier was giving them a reason to believe she was something worse than a traitor. Something unnatural. The test is simple, Javier said, gesturing to the silver dagger on the table. Silver burns those who practice blood magic. It rejects corrupted souls. So you will take this blade. He held it out to her. And you will cut your own palm. If you bleed clean and the wound begins to heal, you are innocent. But if the silver burns you from the inside out, he didn't need to finish. Celeste stared at the dagger. Silver burned all wolves if it stayed in contact with their skin long enough. That was basic biology. But shifters healed fast enough that a simple cut wouldn't cause lasting damage, unless you were wolfless. Unless you had no supernatural healing at all. This is murder, Celeste breathed. You know I'm wolfless. You know I can't heal from silver. Then I suppose, Javier said softly, pressing the dagger into her shackled hands. You should have thought about that before demonstrating knowledge you shouldn't possess. Natasha was smiling again on the platform. Luna Diane looked satisfied. And Alpha Greg was watching with an expression that might have been guilt, if he were capable of such an emotion. Celeste looked at the dagger in her hands, then at the crowd, then up at the darkening sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. She thought about Everett Taylor, about a man who saved everyone and was murdered for it, about a bloodline cursed to be punished for being exceptional, and she thought about the stranger's words. Survive this. The world needs more survivors who refuse to break. No, Celeste said. Javier blinked. What? I said no. Celeste dropped the dagger. It clattered on the stone, silver gleaming in the torchlight. This isn't a test. It's an execution with extra steps. You want me to cut myself and bleed out slowly so you can call it justice. I refuse. Then you forfeit. Natasha shrieked from the platform, leaping to her feet. She forfeits. Execute her. I didn't forfeit, Celeste said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. I'm calling tribunal. The crowd's roar cut off like someone had severed its throat. Tribunal. The ancient right of any accused wolf to demand judgment from a higher authority than pack leadership. It hadn't been invoked in the Northern Summit Pack in over 100 years. You can't. Alpha Greg started. Pack Law, Article 7, Section 3, Celeste quoted. Any wolf accused of crimes against nature may demand tribunal from the Alpha King himself. You can't deny me that right. Not unless you want to declare your entire pack in violation of the old laws. She saw the trap snap shut on their faces. If they denied her tribunal, they'd be admitting their trial was unlawful. Every pack in the region would know. The Alpha King would know, and they couldn't afford that. The tribunal is granted, a new voice spoke deep, resonant, and carrying the weight of absolute command. The crowd parted like water, and through the gap came Alpha King Harold Walls himself. He was massive, even larger than Alpha Greg, with shoulders that seemed to block out the stars. His hair was pure silver, worn long and wild, and his eyes, Celeste finally understood why they'd unsettled her so much during his visit. They were gold, pure, molten gold. The eyes of a wolf so ancient and powerful that his beast was visible even in human form. Your Majesty, Alpha Greg stammered, actually stammering. We didn't expect. I've been watching this farce from the beginning, Harold Walls said, his voice cold enough to freeze blood. And I find myself disappointed. In your leadership, in your justice, in your basic decency as wolves. He moved to the judgment stone, and every shifter in the clearing bowed their heads in submission, including Alpha Greg, including Luna Diane, including even Natasha, everyone except Celeste, who was too shocked to move. The Alpha King stopped directly in front of her, those golden eyes boring into hers. "Celeste Anderson," he said quietly, "just for her. You demanded tribunal. You have it. And I suspect you've been asking yourself why I'm here, why I was watching, why I didn't intervene sooner." Celeste's voice had abandoned her entirely. Harold Walls smiled. "And it was a terrible, beautiful thing. Because I wanted to see if you'd break. If you'd submit. If you'd die quietly like your family wanted." His hand reached out, tilting her chin up with surprising gentleness. "But you didn't. You fought. You survived. You refused." He turned to address the crowd. "The second challenge is complete. Celeste Anderson has passed. And the third challenge," his eyes found Alpha Greg. "The third challenge will be administered by me personally. Tomorrow. At dawn. And I promise you all it will be unlike any trial you've ever witnessed." The Alpha King's presence, his words, his sheer power, it all crashed over the clearing like a tidal wave. "Court is adjourned," Harold Walls declared. "Everyone out, now." The crowd scattered like leaves in a storm. And Celeste, still shackled and bleeding and utterly bewildered, found herself alone on the judgment stone, with the most powerful wolf in existence staring at her like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. "You really don't know, do you?" he murmured. "Know what?" Celeste managed. Harold Walls leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more intimate than a touch. "Why you're still alive, Celeste Anderson. Why you survived when you should have died a dozen times over. Why you have no wolf." He paused, his golden eyes gleaming. "And yet, I can smell her inside you. Sleeping, waiting, furious." Celeste's heart stopped. "Tomorrow at dawn," the Alpha King said, straightening. "Be ready. Because the third trial isn't about survival anymore." He started to walk away, then glanced back over his shoulder. "It's about awakening." Chapter 3. The Awakening Trial. Dawn broke over the northern Summit Pack territory like a wound splitting open, all crimson and gold bleeding across the horizon in shades that promised violence. Celeste hadn't slept. How could she, when the Alpha King's words echoed in her skull like war drums? "I can smell her inside you." Sleeping, waiting, furious. She'd spent the night in a different cage, this one clean, with actual bedding and food that wasn't molded, a courtesy extended by royal decree. Roman Terry had brought her fresh clothes before midnight. Simple dark pants, a fitted tunic, and boots that actually fit. No more tattered dress. No more going barefoot like an animal. "The king's orders," Roman had muttered, avoiding her eyes as usual. "He wants you presentable." Presentable for what? Execution? Transformation? Some third option that defied imagination? Now, as guards escorted her back to the trial grounds, Celeste could see the changes that had occurred overnight. The judgment stone had been cleared entirely, replaced by a massive circular platform carved with symbols she didn't recognize, ancient runes that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Around the platform's perimeter, torches burned with blue-white flames that gave off no smoke, only an eerie luminescence that made the pre-dawn darkness seem even deeper. And in the center of it all stood Alpha King Harold Walls. He'd changed too. Gone were the formal leathers of royalty. Now he wore simple black, his chest bare, except for a series of scars that formed their own kind of map history written in flesh. His silver hair was tied back, revealing the sharp angles of his face, and those golden eyes tracked her approach with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The crowd was smaller today. Only pack leadership, the royal guard, and a handful of witnesses deemed worthy by the king himself. Celeste saw her father standing at rigid attention, Luna Diane beside him with an expression like she'd swallowed glass. And Natasha looked terrified. "Good. Celeste Anderson." Harold Wall's voice carried despite its quietness, vibrating through the air itself. "Step onto the platform." Celeste's feet moved before her brain caught up. The moment she crossed onto the carved surface, power slammed into her, ancient, vast, and utterly foreign. The runes flared brighter, responding to her presence, and she gasped as sensation flooded her body. It felt like being seen for the first time in her life, like every cell was suddenly awake. "Do you know what this is?" Harold asked, gesturing to the platform. "No, Your Majesty. This is a revelation circle." used by the first packs to test bloodlines, to verify heritage, to uncover truths that have been buried or forgotten. He circled her slowly. Predatory and patient. It cannot be fooled, cannot be lied to. It reads the soul itself and exposes what lies beneath. Celeste's mouth went dry. What are you looking for? The same thing I've been looking for since the moment I first saw you 3 weeks ago. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. An answer to an impossible question. How can you be wolfless when your scent carries the bloodline of the most powerful pack that ever existed? The crowd stirred. Confused murmurs rippled through the witnesses. I don't understand, Celeste said. No, you wouldn't, because your family made sure you never would. Harold's golden eyes found Alpha Greg, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tell me, Alpha Donnelly, when did you discover the truth about your eldest daughter's heritage? Alpha Greg's face had gone ashen. Your Majesty, When? The word cracked like thunder, and several wolves in the crowd actually whimpered and dropped to their knees. When she was 6, Greg whispered. We had a bloodline verification performed, required for all alpha heirs. The results. He swallowed hard. They were impossible. Show them, Harold commanded. Greg pulled a folded parchment from inside his jacket with shaking hands. Roman Terry took it, brought it to the Alpha King, who unfolded it and held it up for all to see. Celeste couldn't read it from this distance, but she saw the official seals, the formal script, This document, Harold said, his voice cutting, certifies that Celeste Anderson carries the bloodline of the Silver Moon Pack. Not as a distant descendant, not as a diluted connection, but as a direct heir. Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. The Silver Moon Pack, Harold continued, ruled these lands 800 years ago. They were the apex, the pinnacle. Wolves so powerful that their alpha could command entire armies with a thought. Their power was so great that the other packs grew jealous, afraid, and so they conspired, united against a common threat, and they slaughtered every last Silver Moon wolf, in what historians now call the Purge of Silver. Celeste's legs threatened to buckle. That's a myth, a legend. Is it? Harold moved closer, his presence overwhelming. Tell me something, Celeste. Have you never wondered why you have no wolf? Why you were born to an alpha bloodline but manifested nothing? I thought I was broken, defective. You're not broken. His hand reached out, fingers hovering just above her chest, right over her heart. You're sealed. Someone cast a suppression spell on you when you were an infant. A spell so powerful, so complete, that it locked your wolf away so deep that even you couldn't feel her, couldn't access her, couldn't hear her screaming to be free. The runes beneath Celeste's feet began to glow brighter, responding to his words, to his proximity, to something building in the air between them. Who? Celeste breathed. Who would do that to a child? Harold's eyes found Luna Diane. The Luna's composure finally cracked. It was necessary, she hissed. Do you have any idea what we found when that bloodline test came back? The power she carried? If she'd been allowed to manifest. If her wolf had awakened naturally, she would have been unstoppable. She would have challenged Natasha's position, would have taken everything from my daughter. So you crippled her, Harold said softly. You hired a dark witch to seal a 6-year-old child's wolf, to make her appear defective, to give you an excuse to abuse and neglect her for 18 years. We did what we had to do to protect our pack's future. Diane's voice rose to a shriek. Natasha is the rightful heir. She's trained her whole life to lead. We couldn't let some genetic accident destroy that. Genetic accident. Harold's laugh was utterly devoid of humor. You sealed the bloodline of the Silver Moon Pack and called it protection. Do you have any concept of what you've done? The laws you've violated? The cosmic balance you've disrupted? He turned back to Celeste, and his expression gentled just slightly, but enough that she could see something almost like compassion in those ancient eyes. The seal is breaking, he said quietly. It's been breaking for years, slowly, bit by bit. Every injustice you suffered, every moment of pain and rage and desperate survival, it all fed the cracks. And now, he placed his palm flat against her chest, directly over her heart. Now your wolf is clawing her way out. And when she breaks free, Celeste Anderson, the world will tremble. I don't want this, Celeste whispered. I don't want power. I just want to live. Too late. Harold's hand pressed harder, and suddenly Celeste could feel a presence inside her, vast and furious and so tired of being caged. The third trial isn't a test of your worthiness. It's a test of your wolf's strength. Can she break the seal? Can she emerge despite 18 years of magical suppression? Can she? He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Can she survive what's about to happen? What's about to happen? I'm going to challenge her. Your wolf. I'm going to force her to break free, or die trying. Harold pulled back, his golden eyes blazing. And you, Celeste Anderson, are going to let me. Because if she stays locked inside you, that seal will eventually kill you both. But if she breaks free, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. The Alpha King stepped back to the edge of the platform and raised his hands. The blue-white flames surged higher, and the runes began to spin, actually rotate beneath Celeste's feet like gears in some cosmic machine. By my authority as Alpha King and keeper of the old laws. Harold's voice resonated with power that wasn't entirely human. I invoke the right of forced awakening. Let the seal be tested. Let the wolf be revealed. Let truth burn away all lies. His eyes flooded with gold, not just the irises, but the whites, the pupils, everything turning into molten metal. And then he shifted. But not like any shift Celeste had ever witnessed. There was no pain, no cracking bones, no moment of vulnerability. 1 second Harold Walls stood before her in human form. The next a massive wolf occupied the space easily the size of a bear, with silver fur that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. And those same golden eyes that promised both protection and annihilation. The royal wolf looked at Celeste, and then he threw back his head and howled. The sound shattered something. Not physical, something deeper. Celeste felt it crack inside her chest, felt the seal that had imprisoned her wolf for 18 years splinter under the weight of that ancient commanding call. Wake up, the howl demanded. Wake up and fight. And deep inside Celeste's soul, something answered. It started as a whisper, a stirring, a sensation like she'd been holding her breath her entire life, and only now remembered how to exhale. Then it grew warm at first, then hot, then burning, spreading through her limbs like liquid fire. No, Celeste gasped, falling to her knees as pain exploded through her body. No, I can't. Yes. A voice roared in her mind, not her voice but somehow still her, primal and powerful and utterly enraged. Yes, we can. The seal shattered. Celeste screamed as 18 years of suppressed power detonated inside her all at once. Her bones didn't crack, they sang, reforming and strengthening. Her muscles didn't tear, they multiplied, growing dense and powerful. Her senses didn't sharpen, they exploded, suddenly able to hear heartbeats 50 yards away, smell fear and blood and magic on the wind, taste the electricity in the air. And her wolf gods, her wolf. She was magnificent, not just present, but overwhelming. A consciousness so vast and fierce that Celeste couldn't comprehend how she'd ever lived without feeling her. She was fury and joy and vengeance and love all braided together into something that defied description. Hello, sister, the wolf purred. I've been waiting so long to meet you. Celeste's body convulsed, and she felt the shift begin, but it was wrong, all wrong. The seal had been broken, but it had left damage, scars in her magic, blocks in her soul. The shift fought against 18 years of suppression, trying to force its way through channels that had been deliberately closed. It hurt. Gods, it hurt worse than anything she'd ever experienced. You can do this. Harold's voice cut through her agony, human again. He'd shifted back and now knelt beside her on the platform. The seal is broken, but your body doesn't remember how to shift. You have to teach it. You have to force it. I don't know how. Celeste sobbed, her body caught between human and wolf, trapped in the agonizing middle ground where neither form could fully manifest. Yes, you do. Every wolf knows. It's instinct. His hand gripped her shoulder, grounding her. Stop thinking. Stop being afraid. Just let go. Let go. Simple words. Impossible action. But Celeste was so tired of being afraid. So tired of being small and broken and less than. so tired of letting fear rule her life. So she stopped fighting. She stopped trying to control the shift, stopped trying to protect herself from the pain, stopped trying to remain human because human was all she'd ever been allowed to be. And she let her wolf out. The shift completed in a rush of power that sent shockwaves across the platform. The blue-white flames guttered and died, the runes cracked and went dark, and several wolves in the crowd actually passed out from the sheer force of energy that radiated from the center of the Revelation Circle. Where Celeste Anderson had knelt, a wolf now stood. She was smaller than Harold's royal form, sleeker, built for speed rather than raw power, but her fur was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It wasn't silver like the ancient Silver Moon pack. It wasn't gray or brown or black like normal wolves. It was white, pure, luminous white that seemed to glow from within, like moonlight given physical form. And her eyes, when she opened them and looked at the stunned crowd, they weren't gold or amber or any normal wolf color. They were silver, bright, blazing silver that cut through the pre-dawn darkness like twin stars. The white wolf of Silver Moon legend, the prophesied return of the most powerful bloodline ever to exist, standing on the platform where she'd been meant to die. Celeste's wolf threw back her head and howled a sound of joy and rage and freedom that echoed across the entire territory, waking every shifter for miles. It was a declaration, a promise, a warning to anyone who'd ever hurt her, diminished her, tried to destroy her. I am awake, I am alive, I am fury made flesh, and I will never be caged again. When the howl faded, Celeste shifted back, and this time it was easy, natural, like breathing. She stood on the platform naked and glorious and completely unashamed, her body humming with power she was only beginning to comprehend. Harold Walls smiled, genuinely smiled, and dropped to one knee before her. "All hail," he said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the grounds. The white wolf. The Silver Moon heir. The one foretold. And one by one, every wolf present, including Alpha Greg, including Luna Diane, including even Natasha, fell to their knees and bowed their heads. All except one. Celeste turned her silver eyes on her father, on the man who'd let this happen to her, who'd known the truth and chosen cruelty. "The third trial is complete," she said, her voice steady and cold. "I passed all 3 challenges. By pack law, I am granted exile." "You are," Harold agreed, rising to his feet. "You may leave this territory and never return. You will be considered packless. Free. Good." Celeste's smile was sharp enough to cut. "Because I don't want to be part of a pack that would do this to a child. That would seal her wolf, abuse her, try to murder her for the crime of existing." She looked at Natasha, who was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "You can have your precious alpha position," Celeste said softly. "You can have this pack, this territory, this pathetic excuse for a family. I want none of it." "Where will you go?" Alpha Greg asked, his voice hollow. Celeste looked at Harold Walls, at the Alpha King who'd seen her, saved her, awakened her. "Your Majesty," she said formally. "I am packless. By tradition, packless wolves may petition to join another pack if they can prove their worth. I have proven mine. Will you accept me into the royal pack?" The crowd gasped. The royal pack. The most elite, powerful group of wolves in existence. Only the strongest, smartest, most exceptional wolves were ever invited to join. And Celeste had just asked. Harold's golden eyes met her silver ones, and something passed between them: understanding, respect, and the beginning of something that might eventually become trust. "I will," he said, "on one condition. Name it. You train, every day. Without mercy, without rest. Your wolf is awake, but she's weak from years of imprisonment. You have power, but no control. I will teach you. Personally, and it will be the hardest thing you've ever experienced." Celeste thought about everything she'd survived, the abuse, the trial, the awakening. "I'm not afraid of hard," she said. "Good." Harold extended his hand. "Then welcome to the royal pack, Celeste Anderson. Or should I say, Celeste Silver Moon. The last daughter of the pack that should have died but refused." Celeste took his hand, and as the sun finally broke over the horizon, bathing the trial grounds in golden light. She felt something she hadn't experienced in 18 years. Hope. Chapter 4. The Royal Pack. The royal court was nothing like Celeste had imagined. She'd expected grandeur, marble halls and golden thrones, opulence dripping from every surface like the palace descriptions in children's stories. What she got instead was a fortress carved into the side of a mountain, all dark stone and strategic defenses, with windows narrow enough to shoot arrows through and walls thick enough to withstand a siege. It looked like what it was, a place built for war, not comfort. Disappointed? Harold asked as their convoy of vehicles wound up the mountain road. He'd insisted on driving her himself, leaving his royal guard to follow behind. What? Trust? Or was it strategy keeping the potentially dangerous white wolf where he could watch her? No, Celeste answered honestly, watching the fortress grow larger through the window. It makes sense. You're not just a king, you're a general. This is a headquarters, not a palace. Harold's lips quirked. You see clearly. That will serve you well here. He glanced at her, his golden eyes unreadable in the dim interior of the vehicle. But I should warn you, the royal pack is not a welcoming place. These wolves are the best of the best. Warriors who've proven themselves in blood and battle. Scholars who've mastered ancient knowledge. Strategists who've won wars before they were fought. And they will resent you. Because I haven't earned my place, Celeste said flatly. Because you were given your place by royal decree rather than invitation earned through merit. Harold's tone wasn't unkind, just matter of fact. They'll test you, challenge you. Some will try to break you just to prove you don't belong. And he paused, choosing his words carefully. I will not protect you from them. You must prove yourself on your own terms. Celeste had expected nothing less. Good. I don't want protection. I want respect. And you can't give me that. I have to take it. Something flickered in Harold's expression, approval, maybe, or recognition. Your wolf has given you confidence. My wolf has given me clarity. Celeste touched her chest, feeling the constant hum of power there now. The presence of her other self always waiting just beneath her skin. For 18 years I thought I was nothing. Broken. Less than. But I wasn't. I was just sleeping. And now that I'm awake, she met his eyes. Now I understand what I'm capable of. And I'm done apologizing for existing. Harold smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. Good. Hold on to that fire. You'll need it. The convoy pulled through massive iron gates, and Celeste got her first look at the royal pack's inner compound. It was organized. Brutally so. Training grounds occupied the eastern section, where even at mid-morning she could see wolves sparring in both human and wolf form. Barracks lined the southern wall, utilitarian and identical. A massive building that had to be administrative headquarters dominated the center, with smaller structures, armory, medical facility, what looked like a library arranged in precise geometric patterns around it. Everything about it screamed military discipline and efficiency. Your quarters are in the East Wing, Harold said as they exited the vehicle. Two guards immediately flanked them, a man and woman, both carrying themselves with the easy confidence of trained killers. You'll share a floor with the other recent inductees. Common areas on the first level, private rooms on the second. Training begins at dawn tomorrow. Not today? Celeste asked, surprised. Today you rest, settle in, meet your floor mates. Tomorrow. His smile turned sharp. Tomorrow I break you down and rebuild you into something worthy of that silver-eyed wolf. He left her at the entrance to the East Wing with a curt nod, already moving toward the headquarters building with his guards. Business to attend to. A kingdom to run. A packless wolf's orientation wasn't important enough to delay his schedule. Celeste appreciated that. She didn't want to be coddled. The East Wing's entrance opened into a surprisingly comfortable common area, large couches arranged around a central fireplace, a kitchen set up along one wall, tables for eating or working, and occupying those spaces were 4 wolves who all turned to stare at her the moment she walked in. The silence was immediate and hostile. So you're the charity case, said a female voice, sharp and unimpressed. The speaker was lean and athletic, with short black hair and eyes like chips of ice. She sat sprawled across one of the couches, her posture deliberately casual in a way that screamed controlled aggression. The white wolf everyone's suddenly obsessed with. "I'm Celeste," she replied evenly, refusing to be baited. "I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. The king's been talking about nothing else for 3 weeks." The woman stood, moving with predatory grace. "I'm Cherie Glass. I earned my place here by winning the Northern Combat Championships 3 years running." "What did you do? Get born with fancy-colored fur?" Before Celeste could respond, another voice cut in male, deeper, with an accent she couldn't place. "Cherie, play nice. She just got here." The speaker was massive, easily 6'6", with dark skin and a shaved head that showed off impressive scarring. His eyes were kind despite his intimidating appearance, and when he smiled at Celeste, it was genuine. "I'm Cliff Monroe. I earned my place by developing a new combat technique that's now taught across 5 territories. Welcome to the floor." "Don't welcome her yet," another woman interjected. This one older, maybe early 40s, with gray streaking through her brown hair, and a face that looked like it had seen too much and remembered all of it. She studied Celeste with the cold assessment of a scientist examining a specimen. "She hasn't survived a week. Most royal inductees don't." "Most royal inductees aren't me," Celeste said quietly. The older woman's eyebrow arched. "No? What makes you special?" "I survived 18 years of being wolfless in an alpha pack. I survived a trial designed to kill me. I survived having my wolf forcibly awakened after being magically sealed since childhood." Celeste met each of their stares in turn. "So whatever tests you think will break me? I've probably already endured worse." Silence fell again, but this time it was different, considering rather than hostile. "Joe Shelton," the older woman said finally. "Intelligence specialist. I earned my place by successfully infiltrating and dismantling a rogue network that had been operating for 15 years. She gestured to the last occupant of the room, a young man, maybe 20, with nervous energy and eyes that wouldn't stay still. "That's Toby Maddox. He's our tech genius. Youngest inductee in Royal Pack history." Toby waved awkwardly, not quite meeting Celeste's eyes. I hacked the king's personal security system when I was 17. To prove it could be done, he arrested me, then offered me a job." He laughed nervously. "So, yeah, welcome, I guess. Your room is upstairs, second door on the left," Cherie said, her tone still cold but no longer actively hostile. "Training clothes are provided, you'll find everything you need. And a word of advice: get sleep while you can. Tomorrow, the king's going to destroy you." "Looking forward to it," Celeste replied. She climbed the stairs to the second floor, found her room, and stepped inside. It was nice, small, but functional. A bed, a desk, a wardrobe, a private bathroom. The window looked out over the training grounds, where she could watch wolves practicing their forms. Everything was clean, organized, and completely impersonal. Perfect. Celeste collapsed onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She'd been running on adrenaline and desperation for days. Now, in this quiet room, in a fortress full of strangers, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. She had a wolf. After 24 years of being nothing, she was something. She was powerful, special, potentially important in ways she didn't fully understand yet, and she was completely, utterly alone. "Not alone," her wolf murmured in her mind, the sensation still strange and wonderful. "You have me now. Always. Who are you?" Celeste asked silently. "Do you have a name?" "I am you. You are me. We are one consciousness split across 2 forms." The wolf's presence felt warm, protective. "But if you need to call me something, call me Silver. For the bloodline we carry. For the legacy we'll reclaim." "I don't know how to do this," Celeste admitted. "Be this. Be powerful. Be important. Then we'll learn together," Silver replied. "We've survived everything else. We'll survive this too." Celeste closed her eyes, letting the exhaustion pull her under. She dreamed of silver fur and ancient battles, of a pack that had been slaughtered for being too strong, of power that had slept for 800 years waiting for the right vessel to awaken it. She dreamed of blood and prophecy and destiny she hadn't asked for. and she dreamed of golden eyes watching her from the shadows, patient and predatory and impossibly old. Dawn came too quickly. Celeste jerked awake to pounding on her door, and Cherie's voice shouting through the wood. "Training in 10 minutes. Move your ass, White Wolf, or the king will make you run laps until you puke." She scrambled out of bed, found the training clothes in the wardrobe, simple black pants and a fitted tank top, designed for movement, and dressed quickly. Her hair was a disaster, but there was no time to fix it. She pulled it into a messy bun and headed downstairs. The others were already in the common area, dressed identically and looking far more awake than she felt. Even Toby, who seemed like he probably preferred computers to physical activity, looked ready. "First day is always hell," Cliff said sympathetically as they headed out together. "The king likes to establish baseline. See what you're working with before he starts the real training." "Define real training," Celeste asked. "You'll see." The training grounds were already occupied when they arrived. At least 30 wolves in various stages of warm-up, all of them radiating the kind of controlled power that marked elite fighters. And standing at the center, arms crossed and expression unreadable, was Harold Walls. He'd changed into training gear, 2 simple black pants and nothing else, his scarred chest and arms on full display. In the early morning light, he looked less like a king and more like a weapon barely contained in human skin. "Line up." His voice carried across the grounds, and every wolf immediately complied, forming perfect rows with military precision. Celeste found herself in the back row, flanked by Cherie and Cliff. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral. Harold's golden eyes swept across the assembled wolves, cataloging, assessing. When they landed on Celeste, they lingered. "We have a new inductee," he announced. "Celeste Silvermoon. White Wolf. Last daughter of the pack that should have died but refused. And she is." He paused deliberately. "Completely untrained. Uncontrolled. Unproven. She has raw power and nothing else." Celeste's face burned, but she refused to look away. "So today," Harold continued, his voice dropping into something darker, "we begin the breaking process. She will train with all of you. She will fail to keep up with all of you. And you will not adjust your pace to accommodate her weakness. We don't coddle here. We don't accept mediocrity. We forge weapons out of flesh and bone, and if the material isn't strong enough," he smiled, cold and sharp, "then it shatters." He moved toward Celeste with deliberate slowness, each step measured and precise. When he stood directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, he spoke quietly but not quietly enough that the others couldn't hear. "Your wolf is awake, but she's weak. 18 years of imprisonment left her atrophied. You need to rebuild her strength, her speed, her endurance. And that means pushing her past every limit she thinks she has." His golden eyes bored into her silver ones. "It will hurt. Every day. For months. Maybe years. And there is no guarantee you'll survive the process intact." "I'll survive," Celeste said. "Prove it. Shift." Celeste blinked. "What?" "Shift. Now. Show everyone your wolf. Let them see what they'll be working with." It was a test, obviously, and probably meant to humiliate her, make her shift in front of all these elite warriors, show them how weak she really was. But Celeste had spent 18 years being humiliated. She was done caring what people thought. She reached for Silver, felt her wolf surge forward eagerly, and let the shift take her. It was easier this time, faster. Her body remembered the transformation, and within seconds she stood on 4 legs instead of 2, her white fur gleaming in the morning sun. The assembled wolves stared. Because even though Silver was smaller than most of them, even though her muscles weren't yet developed and her form lacked the polish of trained fighters, she was beautiful, luminous, like moonlight made flesh, with those silver eyes that seemed to see straight through to the soul. "Interesting," Harold murmured, circling her in wolf form. "You shift without pain now. That's progress." He stopped in front of her, close enough that their muzzles nearly touched. "But can you run?" He shifted in a blur of motion, that same effortless transformation she'd witnessed during the trial, and his massive silver wolf stood where the man had been. Then he took off running, and every wolf on the training grounds followed. Celeste didn't think. She just moved, her legs pumping as she tried to keep up with the pack streaming toward the forest that bordered the compound. They were fast gods. They were fast, and within seconds she was falling behind, her weaker muscles struggling to match their pace. "We can do this," Silver insisted, determination flooding their shared consciousness. "We're not letting them leave us behind." Celeste pushed harder, ignoring the burning in her legs, the way her lungs screamed for air. Around her, the elite wolves moved with practiced ease, barely winded. She was the only one struggling, the only one failing. "No," Silver snarled. "We are not weak. We are descendants of the Silver Moon Pack. We are power itself. Move!" Something shifted inside Celeste, not physical, but deeper. Like a door opening inside her soul, letting more of Silver's strength flood through. Her legs moved faster. Her breathing steadied. The burning faded into a manageable ache. She wasn't keeping up with the pack leaders. But she wasn't falling behind anymore either. They ran for what felt like hours through the forest, up steep mountain paths, across streams and over fallen logs. Harold set a brutal pace, never slowing, never stopping, demanding everything his wolves had and then more. By the time they circled back to the compound, Celeste's legs were shaking and her vision was starting to blur at the edges. But she'd finished. She'd kept up. She collapsed on the training grounds, shifting back to human form out of sheer exhaustion. Around her, the other wolves were breathing hard but still standing. Still strong. Still so far ahead of her it was laughable. Harold shifted back and walked over to where she lay gasping on the ground. "Pathetic," he said flatly. "You lasted 15 miles. We run 30 every morning. 15 miles." She'd run 15 miles. And he was calling it pathetic. "Tomorrow," Harold continued, "you'll run 20. The day after, 25. By the end of the month you'll match the full 30, or you'll be removed from the royal pack. Am I clear?" Celeste forced herself to sit up, forced strength into her voice even though every muscle screamed in protest. "Crystal. Good." He extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. He pulled her to her feet with surprising gentleness. "You did better than I expected. Most new wolves can't even finish 10 miles on their first day. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you understand that you can improve. That you're not as weak as you think you are." His golden eyes held hers. "But improvement requires suffering, requires pushing past pain into something worse. Are you prepared for that?" Celeste thought about 18 years of suffering. Of being nothing, having nothing, being worth nothing. "I've been preparing my whole life," she said. Harold's smile was sharp and approving. "Then let's see how much you can endure." The run was just the warm-up. Real training starts now. Subscribe and like this video if you're rooting for Celeste to prove them all wrong. Because the journey from broken to unbreakable is one we all need to witness. And what comes next? It's going to hurt so good. Comment. What would you do in Celeste's position? Would you push through the pain? Or would you admit when you're beaten? Tell me what strength really means to you. Chapter 5. Blood and Prophecy. The real training turned out to be a systematic destruction of everything Celeste thought she knew about herself. Harold hadn't been exaggerating. For the next 3 weeks, every dawn brought a new form of torture disguised as education. Running 30 miles became baseline, just the morning warm-up before the actual training began. Combat drills followed. Hand-to-hand sparring against wolves twice her size, learning to use her smaller frame as an advantage rather than a liability. Weapons training came after that. Staffs, blades, even archaic weapons like the war chains that the ancient packs had used before modern warfare made them obsolete. And through it all, Harold pushed her mercilessly. Again, he barked as Celeste hit the training mat for the 8th time in 10 minutes. Her opponent, a massive male, named Phil Mayer, who'd earned his royal pack position by single-handedly defending a border outpost against 20 rogues, barely looked winded. Celeste dragged herself upright, tasting blood where she'd bitten her tongue. Every muscle in her body screamed. Her ribs were bruised. Her left eye was swelling shut. "We can't keep doing this," she thought desperately at Silver. "Yes, we can," her wolf replied, fierce and unyielding. "We've survived worse than a few bruises." "You're telegraphing your moves," Harold said from the sidelines, his arms crossed as he watched with those unreadable golden eyes. "Your shoulders drop before you strike. Your weight shifts too obviously. Any competent fighter can read you like a book. Then teach me not to telegraph." Celeste snapped, frustration boiling over. 3 weeks of this, and she felt like she was barely improving. The other wolves could still beat her easily. She still couldn't keep up with their speed, their strength, their years of training. "I am teaching you," Harold replied calmly, "by letting you fail, again and again and again, until your body learns through pain what your mind refuses to accept. Now." He gestured to Phil. Again, Phil lunged. Celeste tried to dodge, tried to use the technique Harold had drilled into her yesterday: pivot left, duck under the strike, sweep the legs, but her exhausted body moved too slowly. Phil's fist connected with her solar plexus, driving the air from her lungs. She went down hard. "Enough." Harold's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. "Phil," dismissed. "Celeste, with me." She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Just lay on the mat trying to remember how lungs worked while Phil walked away without a backward glance. Harold crouched beside her, and for the first time in 3 weeks, his expression softened just slightly. "You're trying too hard. Fighting with desperation instead of confidence. Your body knows what to do, but your mind keeps interfering, overthinking every movement." "I'm not strong enough," Celeste gasped out. "Fast enough. Good enough. You were right, I'm pathetic. I never said that." Harold's hand gripped her shoulder, not roughly but firmly enough to ground her. "I said you were untrained. There's a difference. Pathetic implies inherent weakness. Untrained means you simply haven't learned yet." He pulled her into a sitting position. "But you will. Because you're stubborn enough to refuse to quit, even when quitting would be easier." "How do you know I won't quit?" "Because if you were the quitting type, you'd have died during your trial. Or during the first week here. Or yesterday, when Cherie broke 2 of your ribs, and you still finished the training session." His golden eyes studied her face. "You don't know how to quit. It's not in your nature. And that," he smiled slightly, "that's why you'll survive what comes next." Dread settled in Celeste's stomach. What comes next? The second phase of your training. Physical conditioning was just the foundation. Now we build the actual structure. He stood, offering his hand again, that gesture that was becoming familiar between them. "Come with me. There's something you need to see." Harold led her away from the training grounds, through the compound toward a section of the fortress Celeste had never been allowed to enter. Guards stood at attention as they passed, bowing their heads to their king. They climbed stairs, endless stairs that wound up through the mountain itself, until finally they emerged onto a platform carved into the rock face. The view stole what little breath Celeste had left. They stood hundreds of feet above the compound, the world spreading out below them in a tapestry of forest and mountain and distant territories. She could see packlands stretching to the horizon, bordered by the great wilderness where rogues and worse things dwelled. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Harold said quietly, moving to stand at the edge, where only a low stone wall separated them from the fatal drop. "I come here when I need perspective. When the weight of leadership becomes too heavy to bear alone." Celeste joined him cautiously, her legs still shaky from the beating she'd taken. "Why did you bring me here?" "To show you what you're fighting for." He gestured to the vast landscape. "All of this, every pack, every territory, every wolf living in relative peace exists because someone is willing to make hard choices, to carry burdens that would break lesser wolves, to sacrifice personal happiness for the greater good. That someone being you?" Celeste said. "For now. But I'm old, Celeste. Older than you can imagine. I've ruled for 300 years, watching generations rise and fall, seeing the same patterns repeat over and over." His voice carried a weariness that made him seem ancient despite his ageless appearance. "And I'm tired." Celeste's heart skipped. "You're dying?" "No, but I'm fading. Power like mine doesn't last forever. Eventually it needs to pass to a new vessel. A new alpha strong enough to carry the weight of an entire species." He turned to face her fully, and there was something in his expression she couldn't read. "The prophecies say that when the white wolf returns, it signals either the dawn of a new age or the end of everything." "That's comforting," Celeste muttered. "It's not meant to be. It's meant to be true." Harold moved closer, his presence overwhelming even without any overt display of power. Do you know why your pack, the Silver Moon Pack, was destroyed 800 years ago? You said they were too powerful. The other packs were jealous. That's part of it. But the real reason…" He paused, choosing words carefully. The Silver Moon Pack didn't just have power. They had the ability to take power, to absorb the strength of other wolves, to command them absolutely, to reshape the very fabric of pack bonds themselves. They could have united all wolves under a single banner, could have created a kingdom that spanned continents. So they were killed for being too ambitious? They were killed for being too dangerous. Harold's eyes bored into hers. Because that kind of power corrupts. Absolute power over other wolves means absolute ability to abuse them. The Silver Moon Alphas were tyrants, Celeste. Beautiful, powerful, charismatic tyrants who bent every other pack to their will. And when the other packs finally had enough, when they united against the common threat, he gestured vaguely. Genocide seemed like the only solution. Celeste's blood ran cold. Are you saying I'm going to become a tyrant? I'm saying you have the potential to become one. The bloodline is in you, the power is in you. And without proper training, without the right guidance. Harold's hand came up to cup her face, his touch surprisingly gentle. Without someone to teach you control, you could become the very thing your ancestors were, a monster wrapped in beautiful fur. Then teach me, Celeste whispered. Isn't that why you brought me here? Why you're training me? To prevent that? Partly. But there's another reason. Harold's thumb traced her cheekbone, and Celeste felt her pulse spike at the intimacy of the gesture. The prophecy doesn't just say the white wolf will return. It says she'll either save the wolf kind, or she'll destroy it. And the key to which path she takes. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her face. Is who she chooses to bond with. Understanding crashed over Celeste like ice water. You want me to be your mate. I want you to have the choice, Harold corrected. The prophecy says the white wolf's mate will determine her path. Bond with someone weak, and her power will corrupt her, drive her to domination and tyranny. But bond with someone strong enough to match her, to balance her, to keep her grounded. His golden eyes searched hers. Then she becomes what she's meant to be. A queen, a leader. The one who finally unites all wolves not through tyranny but through respect. And you think you're strong enough to be that balance, Celeste said, her voice flat. I know I am. I've held the wolf kingdom together for 3 centuries. I've resisted corruption, tyranny, the temptation to abuse my power. I've learned control that most alphas can't even imagine. His hand dropped away from her face, giving her space. But I'm not demanding this, Celeste. I'm offering it. The choice is yours. Always. Celeste's mind spun. A mate. The Alpha King himself wanted her as his mate. It should have been flattering, maybe even exciting. A nobody from nowhere being offered the highest position in the wolf world. But it felt like another cage. Another situation where she was being used for her bloodline, her power, her potential value, rather than who she actually was. What if I say no? She asked quietly. Then I continue training you, continue preparing you to control your power, and when you're ready, I release you into the world to find your own path. Harold's expression was sincere. I'm not a tyrant, Celeste. I don't force bonds. Don't force love. I'm simply… He smiled ruefully. I'm simply an old wolf who's been alone for a very long time, and who sees in you something he thought died 800 years ago, hope. Before Celeste could respond, a commotion erupted from below. Shouts, the clash of metal, the distinctive snarl of wolves fighting. Harold's entire demeanor shifted instantly from vulnerable and almost human to the deadly predator he truly was. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the stairs. Like hell. Celeste shot back, following him. They descended at a run, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The sounds of combat grew louder, multiple wolves engaged. And from the smell of blood on the wind, it was serious. They burst into the main compound to find chaos. A group of wolves, strangers, their scent marking them as outsiders, had breached the fortress somehow and were fighting Harold's royal guard in the central courtyard. There were at least a dozen attackers, all of them fighting with the desperate ferocity of wolves with nothing to lose. Rogues. But organized rogues, which was almost unheard of. Rogues were solitary by nature. Outcasts who couldn't or wouldn't maintain pack bonds. To see them working together meant someone had united them, given them purpose. Protect the king. Roman Terry's voice roared above the chaos. The guard captain was in wolf form, his gray fur matted with blood, his own and others. But the attackers weren't focused on Harold. They were focused on Celeste. There, one of them shouted, a massive male with scars covering his muzzle. The White Wolf. Take her alive. 3 rogues broke away from the main fight and charged directly at her. Celeste's training kicked in before her conscious mind could catch up. She shifted mid-stride, feeling Silver surge forward eagerly, and met the first attacker head-on. She was smaller, weaker, less experienced. But she was also faster than they expected, and she'd spent 3 weeks learning to use every advantage she had. The first rogue lunged for her throat. Celeste dropped low, letting him sail over her, then twisted and raked her claws across his exposed belly. Not a killing blow, she still couldn't bring herself to kill, but enough to take him out of the fight. The second attacker was smarter. He circled, looking for an opening, while the third moved to flank her. 2 on 1, Silver growled. Bad odds. Then we make them worse, Celeste replied. She feinted toward the circling wolf, then spun at the last second and charged the flanking one instead. He hadn't expected the sudden aggression. Rogues were used to their prey running, not attacking, and she managed to get her jaws around his front leg before he could react. She bit down hard, felt bone crack, and released him as he howled. 2 down, 1 to go. But the circling wolf wasn't alone anymore. 4 more had broken away from the main fight, and they were all converging on her position. Run, Celeste's survival instinct screamed. We can't fight 5. But there was nowhere to run. She was surrounded, her back against the fortress wall, with 5 hostile rogues closing in. Then a massive silver form crashed into the group like a meteor. Harold's royal wolf was a force of nature. He moved with precision and brutality, his jaws closing around throats, his claws tearing through flesh. Within seconds, 3 of the rogues were down and not getting back up. The remaining 2 tried to flee. They didn't make it far. Harold's royal guard surrounded them, and within moments, the fight was over. Silence fell across the courtyard, broken only by the groans of the wounded and the ragged breathing of exhausted warriors. Harold shifted back to human form, blood staining his chest and arms, his eyes still burning with battle fury. Secure the survivors, he commanded. I want answers. Who sent them? How did they breach our defenses? And why? His gaze found Celeste, who was slowly shifting back, her white fur fading to reveal her human form. Why were they so focused on capturing the White Wolf? No one had an answer. But as guards dragged the 2 surviving rogues away for questioning, Celeste saw something that made her blood freeze. One of them was staring at her with an expression that wasn't hatred or fear. It was reverence. Hail the Silver Queen, the rogue whispered, loud enough for Celeste to hear. Hail the one who will break every chain and free us all. Then his eyes rolled back, foam flecked his lips, and he collapsed dead before he hit the ground. Poison. He'd killed himself rather than be questioned. Harold's curse was creative and vicious. Get the other one to medical. Now. Before he does the same. But it was too late. The second rogue was already convulsing, already dying from whatever poison capsule they'd both carried. Within 30 seconds, both attackers were dead, and Celeste was left standing in a blood-soaked courtyard, surrounded by wolves who were all staring at her with expressions ranging from suspicion to fear to something that might have been awe. Someone, Harold said quietly, dangerously, has been telling stories about you, building a legend, making you into something more than you are. His golden eyes met hers across the courtyard. And whoever they are, they just declared war by breaching my fortress to try to take you. I don't understand, Celeste said, her voice shaking. Why would rogues want to capture me? Because, came a new voice from the fortress entrance. You're not just the White Wolf, dear child. You're the prophecy made flesh, the promised liberator, the one who will supposedly free all wolves from the tyranny of pack bonds and alpha control. Celeste turned to see an ancient female wolf being helped into the courtyard by 2 guards. She was tiny, wizened with age, with milky white eyes that marked her as blind. But despite her apparent frailty, power radiated from her in waves that made Celeste's skin prickle. Who are you? Celeste asked. The old woman smiled, revealing teeth far too sharp for someone so seemingly harmless. I'm Priscilla Hendricks, Oracle of the First Pack. keeper of prophecies and reader of fates. And I've been waiting 300 years to meet you, White Wolf. Because you—" She pointed one gnarled finger directly at Celeste with eerie accuracy for someone blind. "You are either our salvation or our extinction. And I'm here to help you figure out which." Chapter 6. The Oracle's Truth. Harold's private council chamber was nothing like the cold military efficiency of the rest of the fortress. Here, ancient tapestries lined the walls depicting battles long forgotten, pacts that no longer existed, and symbols whose meanings had been lost to time. A massive table dominated the center, carved from a single piece of black wood that legend claimed came from the first forest where wolves had first learned to shift. And seated around that table were the wolves who truly ran the kingdom. Celeste recognized some of them from the compound. Roman Terry, his scarred face grave as he listened; Joe Shelton, the intelligence specialist, her sharp eyes cataloging every detail. A few others she'd seen in passing, high-ranking warriors, advisors, wolves who carried themselves with the authority of those who'd earned their positions through blood and brilliance. And at the head of the table sat Harold, his expression carved from stone, with Priscilla Hendricks beside him looking impossibly small and impossibly dangerous all at once. "Tell her," Harold said without preamble. "All of it. She deserves to know what she stepped into." Priscilla's blind eyes turned towards Celeste with unnerving accuracy, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. "The prophecy of the White Wolf is older than any living pack. It was written during the Silver Moon reign, when the last oracle of that bloodline saw what was coming, and recorded it for future generations." She reached into her robes and produced a scroll so ancient it looked like it might crumble at a touch. The original text was destroyed during the Purge. "This is a copy, transcribed by my predecessor, who received it from hers, passed down through 15 generations of oracles." She unrolled the scroll carefully, and Celeste saw symbols and text in a language she didn't recognize, flowing, elegant script that seemed to shimmer in the torchlight. "I'll translate the relevant sections," Priscilla continued. "Listen carefully, child. This is your fate, whether you accept it or not." She began to read, her voice taking on a rhythmic quality that made the words feel alive. "In the time of great darkness, when wolf turns against wolf and the old bonds fracture, the White Wolf shall return, born of the silver bloodline but raised in chains. She will know suffering as intimately as she knows breath. And in her suffering, power will be forged, power to unite or power to destroy, determined by the path she walks. 3 forces will seek to claim her: the crown who desires order, the chainless who desire freedom, the forgotten who desire vengeance. Each will offer her truth twisted to serve their purpose. Each will promise her destiny while seeking to control it. Should she bond with the crown, she will bring unity through strength but risk becoming the tyrant her ancestors were. Should she bond with the chainless, she will bring freedom through chaos but risk destroying the structures that keep wolves from savagery. Should she bond with the forgotten, she will bring justice through blood but risk genocide of her own kind. And should she bond with none, walking her path alone, she will either transcend all prophecy and forge a new destiny, or she will tear herself apart trying to be everything to everyone and succeed at nothing. The choice is hers, the consequence is ours, and the world will burn or bloom based on where her heart finds home. Priscilla rolled the scroll closed, and silence filled the chamber like a physical presence. Celeste's mind reeled. That's not a prophecy. That's just a list of vague possibilities that could mean anything." "Exactly," Joe Shelton said from across the table, her voice sharp with cynicism. "Prophecies are always vague enough to be interpreted any way you want. That's how they stay relevant for centuries. The real question isn't what the prophecy says, it's who's using it to advance their agenda." "The crown," Priscilla said, gesturing to Harold, "is obvious. The Alpha King wants to bond with you, to ensure you choose order and unity. He believes he can guide you away from tyranny while harnessing your power to strengthen the kingdom." Harold's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "The chainless," Priscilla continued, "are the rogues. But not the mindless outcasts most packs imagine. There's an organized movement has been for decades of wolves who reject pack bonds entirely. They believe alpha authority is inherently corrupted, that true freedom means living without hierarchy, and they see you as their messiah, the one who can break pack bonds permanently and liberate all wolves." "That's insane," Celeste said. I can't break pack bonds. I don't even know how pack bonds work properly yet. You underestimate your bloodline, Priscilla replied. The Silvermoon Alphas could manipulate pack bonds that will strengthen them, weaken them, sever them entirely. It's in your blood. Dormant but present. If someone taught you how to access that ability. She let the implication hang. And the Forgotten? Celeste asked, dreading the answer. Ah. Priscilla's expression darkened. The Forgotten are descendants of the packs that were destroyed during the Silver Moon reign, bloodlines that were nearly exterminated by your ancestors' tyranny. They've been waiting 800 years for a Silver Moon heir to emerge so they can exact revenge. Not just on you, on every pack that carries even a trace of Silver Moon genetics. They want to purge the bloodline entirely. Make sure it can never rise again. Celeste's stomach dropped. How many wolves carry Silver Moon genetics? About 40% of the current population, Joe answered quietly. Your ancestors were prolific. Before the purge, they'd interbred with dozens of packs, spreading their bloodline like roots through the wolf population. Killing everyone with Silver Moon genetics would mean genocide on a scale that would make the original purge look like a minor skirmish. So no matter what I do, Celeste said slowly, someone dies. If I choose Herald the Crown, I risk becoming a tyrant. If I choose the Chainless, I destroy pack structure and throw wolves into chaos. If I do nothing, the Forgotten will use me as an excuse to commit mass murder. And if I try to walk alone, she laughed bitterly. I tear myself apart trying to prevent all of it, and probably make everything worse. Now you understand why I drink, Roman Terry muttered, earning him a sharp look from Harold. The attack today wasn't random, Harold said, bringing the conversation back to immediate concerns. The Chainless sent those rogues to capture you. They wanted to take you before I could fully train you, before you could make an informed choice about which path to walk. They believe if they can get to you first, fill your head with their ideology, you'll join their cause. And the Forgotten? Celeste asked. Where are they? Watching, Priscilla said softly. Waiting. They know you're not trained yet. Not powerful enough to be the threat your ancestors were. So they're patient, building their forces, planning their strike for maximum impact. Her blind eyes fixed on Celeste with unnerving precision. But they will come. And when they do, it will be with the intent to eliminate not just you, but everyone you care about. Everyone who might carry on your bloodline. Celeste felt the walls closing in. This was bigger than she'd imagined. Worse. She'd thought her trial, her awakening, her arrival at the royal pack was the hard part. But it was just the beginning. What do I do? The words came out small, defeated. Harold stood, moving around the table to crouch in front of her chair, bringing his eyes level with hers. You train. You learn to control your power. You study pack bonds, pack history, pack politics until you understand the game being played. And then, his hand covered hers where it rested on the table. Then you make your choice with full knowledge of the consequences. Not because I want you to choose me. Not because anyone pressures you. But because you've seen all the options and decided which future you want to build. That's surprisingly noble for someone who admitted he wants to bond with her, Joe observed dryly. I want many things, Harold replied, not taking his eyes off Celeste. But I've learned the difference between desire and wisdom. Yes. I believe bonding with me would be best for the kingdom, best for Celeste's development, best for preventing the darker outcomes the prophecy warns about. But I also know that forced bonds are poison. If she chooses me out of fear or obligation rather than genuine connection, it will fail. And failure. He finally looked away. Failure means we get the worst possible outcome. A white wolf bonded to someone she resents, her power corrupted by resentment and duty rather than guided by trust. Silence fell again, heavy with implications. I need time, Celeste said finally. Time to think, time to figure out who I am now that I have a wolf. Time to. She gestured helplessly. Time to not feel like I'm drowning in fate and prophecy and expectations. Of course, Harold said, standing and stepping back to give her space. But understand, time is a luxury we may not have. The Chainless have already made their move. The Forgotten are preparing theirs. And the Crown. He smiled without humor. The Crown is running out of patience, with threats to its stability. Sooner or later, the council will demand I make a decision about you. Either secure you as an ally, or eliminate you as a threat. You'd kill me? Celeste asked, hearing the betrayal in her own voice. I would never kill you, Harold replied, and the fierce certainty in his tone made something in Celeste's chest tighten. But the council doesn't always listen to what I want. And if they decide you're too dangerous, if they believe keeping you alive risks everything we've built. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. How long do I have? Celeste asked. Months. Maybe. The council meets at the winter solstice 7 weeks from now. They'll want answers then. A declaration of your intentions. Some guarantee that you're not going to become the nightmare they fear. 7 weeks. Not enough time to master her power. Probably not enough time to even understand the full scope of what she was capable of. But it would have to be enough. Then I'll train harder, Celeste said, forcing steel into her voice. I'll learn faster. I'll become strong enough that when the winter solstice comes, I can stand before your council and prove I'm not a threat. That I'm an asset. Or, Priscilla interjected softly, you'll become powerful enough to tell the council to go to hell and forge your own path regardless of what they want. That's also an option. Harold shot her a look that could have melted steel. You're not helping. I'm not here to help you, Alpha King. I'm here to help her. Priscilla's attention fixed on Celeste again. The prophecy gives you 4 paths, child. But prophecies are guides, not laws. You have free will, you can choose any path, all paths, or no path. The consequences are real, catastrophically real, but the choice is yours. Never forget that. No matter how much pressure they put on you, no matter how desperate things become, you are not a puppet dancing on fate's strings. You are a wolf with agency. Use it. With that, the ancient oracle stood, or rather allowed her guards to help her stand, and made her way toward the door. I'll be in the fortress for the next month. Come find me when you're ready to learn what your bloodline is truly capable of. The good and the terrible. She paused at the threshold. And Celeste? Be careful who you trust. Everyone at this table has an agenda. Even me. She left. And the tension in the room ratcheted even higher. Meeting adjourned, Harold said curtly. Everyone out except Celeste. The wolves filed out quickly, clearly grateful to escape the oppressive atmosphere. Within moments, Celeste and Harold were alone in the council chamber, the silence between them loaded with everything unsaid. You're angry, Harold observed. I'm overwhelmed, Celeste corrected. I went from being nothing, a wolfless reject that everyone ignored, to being the center of a prophecy that could determine the fate of our entire species. How am I supposed to process that? You're not. Not quickly, anyway. Harold moved to the window, looking out over his kingdom. When I was young, and I mean truly young, centuries ago, I was just a soldier. Strong, yes. Skilled, yes. But nothing special. Then the old Alpha King died without an heir, and suddenly I was thrust into leadership because I happened to win the succession trials. I spent the first 50 years convinced I was going to fail, convinced I'd destroy everything through incompetence. What changed? Celeste asked. I stopped trying to be perfect. Stopped trying to please everyone. Started making decisions based on what I believed was right, rather than what others expected. He turned back to face her. You'll get there too. You'll find your footing. Figure out who you want to be now that you have power, but it takes time, and unfortunately, his expression hardened. We don't have much of that. Celeste stood, needing to move, to do something other than sit under the weight of impossible expectations. The training, can we accelerate it? We're already pushing you to your limits. Then push harder. I need to be ready. Not just physically, but... She gestured vaguely. I need to understand what I'm capable of. The good and the terrible, like Priscilla said. I can't make an informed choice if I don't know what I'm choosing between. Harold studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Respect. Maybe. Or recognition. All right. Tomorrow we start phase 3. Power training. No more just running and fighting. We'll work on your bloodline abilities. Pack bond manipulation. Command presence. The dangerous things your ancestors used to dominate entire territories. Will it hurt? Celeste asked. Probably. Most worthwhile things do. Harold moved closer, and Celeste fought the urge to step back. But I'll be there, guiding you, catching you if you fall too far into the darkness those powers can bring. That's what a proper mentor does. They don't just teach the technique. They teach the control, the responsibility. And if I can't learn control, if the power corrupts me like it corrupted my ancestors, then I'll stop you. His hand came up to cup her face, that gesture that was becoming familiar between them, intimate in a way that made Celeste's pulse quicken. By whatever means necessary, even if it breaks me to do it. That's my promise to you, Celeste. I will not let you become a monster, even if preventing it costs me everything. The intensity in his golden eyes was almost overwhelming. Celeste found herself leaning into his touch despite her better judgment, despite the warnings screaming in her head that this was complicated, that he wanted something from her, that she couldn't afford to get emotionally entangled. Why? She whispered. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. Because I see in you what I was 300 years ago. Lost. Scared. Drowning in power I didn't ask for. And didn't know how to control. I had no one to guide me. No one to catch me when I fell. I made so many mistakes, hurt so many people while learning. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I don't want that for you. I want you to have what I didn't, someone who understands the burden and will help you carry it. It would have been so easy to give in. To lean forward. Close the distance between them. Let herself fall into whatever this was building between them. Harold was offering her everything: protection, guidance, purpose, and maybe something more personal that neither of them had quite named yet. But Celeste had spent too many years being controlled, being told what to do, who to be, what her value was based on someone else's needs. I need to think, she said, gently pulling away from his touch. About all of this. The prophecy, the training, she gestured between them. Whatever this is. Harold let his hand fall, and for just a moment, she saw disappointment flicker across his face. But then it was gone, replaced by the controlled mask of the Alpha King. Of course, take all the time you need. Well, he smiled wryly. Take the 7 weeks you have, anyway. After that, the choice gets made whether you're ready or not. Celeste moved toward the door, then paused. Harold? Thank you. For being honest with me. For not trying to manipulate me or force me into anything. I know you want me to choose you, but you're still giving me the choice. That. She swallowed hard. That means more than you know. I learned long ago that anything worth having is worth earning properly, Harold replied. Even if earning it means risking that I won't get it at all. Celeste left the council chamber and made her way back to the East Wing in a daze. Her mind spun with prophecies and possibilities, with the weight of expectations from 3 different factions all pulling her in different directions. When she entered the common area, she found all 4 of her floor mates waiting: Cherie, Cliff, Joe, and Toby, all looking like they'd been arguing about something. The moment she walked in, they fell silent. We heard, Cherie said finally. About the prophecy. About why those rogues attacked. About, she gestured vaguely. All of it. Word travels fast, Celeste muttered. In the royal pack? Always. Cliff stood, his massive frame somehow managing to look gentle. And we wanted you to know we're on your side. Whatever you decide, whatever path you choose, we've got your back. Why? Celeste asked, genuinely confused. You barely know me. I've been here 3 weeks. Why would you risk getting involved in this mess? Because you're pack now, Joe said simply. Maybe not officially, since you haven't been fully inducted yet, but you live with us, train with us, bleed with us. That makes you ours, and we protect our own. Something warm and painful bloomed in Celeste's chest. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Toby piped up from where he sat, hunched over his laptop. Just. You know. Don't become an evil tyrant who enslaves everyone. That would be awkward. Despite everything, the prophecy, the pressure, the impossible choices, Celeste laughed. I'll do my best. Good enough for us, Cherie said. And for the first time since Celeste had arrived, the ice-eyed warrior smiled. Genuinely smiled. Now come on. I made dinner, and it's getting cold. You need to eat. Tomorrow's training is going to make today look like a vacation. They gathered around the table, and for a few hours, Celeste let herself just be. Not the white wolf. Not the prophecy's fulcrum. Just a young woman eating dinner with friends who'd chosen to stand by her despite the danger that choice brought. It was the first time since her awakening that she felt truly human, and it gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, she could navigate this impossible situation without losing herself entirely. Chapter 7. Bonds of Power. The training grounds at dawn looked different when you knew they were about to become the site of your potential corruption. Celeste stood alone in the center of the empty space, watching the sun bleed across the horizon while she waited for Harold. The other wolves hadn't been called for today's session. This training was too dangerous, too unpredictable, to risk exposing the entire royal pack to whatever might happen when she started learning to manipulate the fundamental connections that bound wolf society together. "Are you scared?" Silver asked in her mind, the wolf's presence a constant warmth beneath her skin now. "Terrified," Celeste admitted. "What if I can't control it? What if I touch someone's pack bond and accidentally break it? Or twist it? Or, then we learn from the mistake and do better next time." Silver interrupted firmly. "We survived 18 years of suppression. We survived a trial designed to kill us. We'll survive this too. Together, talking to your wolf." Celeste turned to find Harold approaching, but he wasn't alone. Priscilla Hendricks walked beside him, her blind eyes somehow finding Celeste across the distance with eerie accuracy. And behind them came 3 other wolves volunteers, Harold had called them, though Celeste suspected volunteers meant people Harold commanded to help with dangerous magical experiments. She recognized one, Kevin Schaefer, the warrior she'd defeated in her first trial. He looked nervous, his jaw tight, but when his eyes met hers, there was no hostility, just determination. "Phase 3 begins with understanding," Harold said, his voice carrying the formal tone of instruction. "Before you can manipulate pack bonds, you need to feel them, see them, understand what they are, and how they function." He gestured to the 3 volunteers. "Kevin, Bill, and Richard have agreed to let you practice on their bonds. They're all low-ranking pack members with simple, straightforward connections, perfect for learning." Bill Finley stepped forward, a lean male with red hair and a face full of freckles. "For the record, if you accidentally lobotomize me, I'd prefer you finish the job rather than leave me a vegetable." "That's not comforting," Celeste said. "Wasn't meant to be. Just setting expectations." Bill grinned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "The pack bond," Priscilla began, her voice taking on that rhythmic quality of a teacher who'd explained this hundreds of times, "is not a physical thing. It's a magical connection formed when a wolf swears allegiance to an alpha. It links the individual's will to the alpha's authority, creating a network of power and loyalty that strengthens both parties. The alpha gains influence over their pack members, not mind control, but emotional resonance. The ability to project calm during chaos, courage during fear, unity during conflict. And pack members gain what?" Celeste asked. "Belonging," Richard Hines answered quietly. He was older than the others, maybe 50, with gray liberally mixed through his brown hair. "Before I joined the Royal Pack, I was packless for 10 years. You know what that's like? Being completely alone in your head? No connection to anyone, no sense of place. It's maddening. The bond gives you anchor, purpose, the knowledge that you're part of something larger than yourself." Celeste thought about her 18 years feeling like she didn't belong anywhere. "I understand that better than you know. Which is why," Priscilla continued, "you need to be careful. The pack bond is beautiful when used properly, but it can also be a chain. Your ancestors didn't just create bonds, they weaponized them. Made them so strong that pack members lost themselves entirely, becoming extensions of the alpha's will with no autonomy. That's the tyranny the prophecy warns about. That's what you must learn to recognize and avoid." Harold moved to stand beside Celeste, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "We'll start simple. I want you to shift, then reach out with your senses. Not your physical senses, your wolf senses. The part of you that's connected to the primal magic that makes shifters what we are." Celeste shifted, feeling Silver emerge with eager curiosity. The world sharpened colors more vivid, sounds more distinct, scents carrying information her human brain couldn't fully process. "Now," Harold's voice continued, and she saw he'd shifted too, his massive silver form standing beside her smaller white one. "Close your eyes. breathe. And feel the space between us. Celeste obeyed, letting her eyes drift closed. At first, there was nothing, just darkness, and the sound of her own heartbeat. But then, slowly, she began to sense something else. A presence. Multiple presences, actually, like warm lights in the darkness, each one distinct and unique. Those are the pack bonds. Harold's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Each light you see represents a connection between an alpha and their pack member. The brighter the light, the stronger the bond. Celeste opened her eyes, her wolf eyes, and gasped. The training grounds had transformed into a web of luminous threads. They stretched from Harold's chest to each of the volunteers, glowing golden lines that pulsed with life and power. And beyond them, extending out across the entire compound, she could see hundreds more, thousands more, creating a massive network that connected Harold to every single wolf in the royal pack. It was beautiful, terrifying, overwhelming in its complexity. The royal pack is nearly 5,000 strong, Harold said quietly. 5,000 individual bonds I maintain simultaneously. 5,000 wolves whose emotions I can feel if I focus, whose loyalty strengthens my own power, whose well-being is tied to my authority. His golden eyes found hers. This is what you're capable of, Celeste. Your bloodline can create bonds even stronger than mine, but with that power comes responsibility. Can you feel their emotions right now? The volunteers? Celeste focused on the 3 glowing threads connecting Harold to Kevin, Bill, and Richard. And yes, there it was, faint but present. She could sense their feelings. Kevin's nervousness, Bill's forced humor masking genuine fear. Richard's calm determination. I feel them, she whispered. Good. Now I want you to try something. Reach out, not with your paws, but with your will, and touch one of the bonds, gently. Don't try to change anything yet. Just make contact. Celeste hesitated. This felt invasive, wrong, like reaching into someone's mind without permission. But they'd volunteered. They knew the risks. And she needed to learn this. She focused on Kevin's bond. It seemed the strongest of the 3, glowing brighter than the others. Slowly, carefully, she extended her awareness toward it. The moment she made contact, sensation flooded her. She could feel Kevin, not just his emotions, but his self, his history, his pride and shame and determination. She felt his memory of their trial fight, the humiliation of losing to a wolfless opponent, and deeper still, she felt his pack bond to Harold, the absolute loyalty, the trust, the willingness to die if the king commanded it. It was intoxicating. This level of access to another wolf's soul. She could see everything about him laid bare, every secret and desire and fear. She could. Stop, Silver growled urgently. Pull back. You're going too deep. Celeste yanked her awareness back like touching hot metal. Kevin collapsed to his knees, gasping, his eyes wide with shock. What did you see? Harold asked, his tone sharp. Everything, Celeste breathed, horrified. His whole life. His connection to you. I wasn't trying to look that deep. You have no control, Priscilla interjected, not unkindly. Your bloodline's power is so great that even a gentle touch can become invasive. This is the first lesson, child. Restraint. You must learn to touch the bonds without drowning in them, without taking more than you're meant to have. Kevin was still on his knees, breathing hard. That was intense. I felt you in my head, like you were inside me. I'm sorry, Celeste said immediately. I didn't mean to. No, it's fine. Just warn me next time. He stood shakily, and Bill moved to support him. But I understand now why they feared your ancestors. If you can do that with a touch, imagine what you could do if you really tried. We're not going to imagine that today, Harold said firmly. Today is just about learning to perceive the bonds without overwhelming yourself or your subject. Celeste, try again. This time, think of it like dipping your paw in water rather than diving in. Surface contact only. They practiced for hours. Celeste touched each volunteer's bond multiple times, learning to moderate her power, to stay in the shallows rather than plunging into the depths of their consciousness. It was exhausting, not physically but mentally, like trying to hold a conversation in a language she barely spoke. constantly monitoring every word to make sure she wasn't accidentally saying something catastrophic. By midday, she could touch a bond without invading the person's entire psyche. Progress, but not nearly enough. That's sufficient for today, Harold said finally, and Celeste heard the approval in his voice. You learn quickly. Most wolves with your bloodline take weeks to achieve surface contact. You did it in hours. Most wolves with my bloodline are probably raised learning this from childhood, Celeste pointed out, shifting back to human form and immediately feeling the exhaustion hit harder without her wolf's strength supporting her. Not discovering it as adults after years of suppression. Fair point. Harold shifted too, and gestured for the volunteers to leave. They did, quickly, clearly grateful to escape before any more intimate magic happened. Once they were alone except for Priscilla, who seemed to have no intention of leaving, Harold moved closer. Tomorrow we move to the next step, learning to strengthen bonds, then weaken them, and eventually. He paused, choosing words carefully. Eventually, you'll learn to create your own bonds, to claim pack members, to build your own power base. I don't want a power base, Celeste said. I don't want to be an alpha. You don't have a choice, Priscilla interjected. Your bloodline makes you an alpha whether you want the title or not. The question isn't whether you'll have power, you have it already, just by existing. The question is whether you'll learn to use it responsibly, or whether you'll let it use you. The Oracle's blind eyes fixed on Celeste with that unnerving precision. Tomorrow's lesson will be harder, more dangerous, because once you learn to strengthen bonds, you'll feel the temptation, the pull, the desire to make those connections so tight, so absolute, that the person on the other end loses themselves completely. Your ancestors couldn't resist that temptation. They convinced themselves that total control was for the greater good, that their pack members were happier as extensions of their will. Priscilla's expression darkened. They were wrong, and the world paid in blood for that mistake. I won't become that, Celeste said. Everyone says that, right up until they cross the line and realize how easy it was, how good it felt. Priscilla moved closer, her gnarled hand reaching out to touch Celeste's face with surprising gentleness. I've lived 300 years, child. I've watched countless wolves drunk on power convince themselves they were righteous, that their tyranny was justified, that they knew better than everyone else. And I've watched them destroy everything they claimed to protect. Her fingers traced Celeste's cheekbone. You have the potential to be different, to be what your ancestors should have been, but potential means nothing without choice. And every day, you'll have to choose not to take the easy path, not to use your power to force the world into the shape you think it should be. How do I know when I've crossed the line? Celeste asked quietly. You won't. Not in the moment. That's the insidious part. The corruption is gradual. It starts with just this once, just this one person who needs guidance, just this one situation where taking control is necessary. And before you know it, you've justified 1,000 small tyrannies and convinced yourself each one was righteous. Priscilla's hand fell away. That's why you need witnesses. People who will tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it. People you trust enough to call you out when you start down that path. Harold's hand came to rest on Celeste's shoulder, a gesture of support and something more complicated. I'll be that witness. If you'll let me. Celeste met his golden eyes. And if you're the one I need watching? Who witnesses the witness? Something flickered in Harold's expression, surprise maybe, or respect for the question. Fair point. That's why you need multiple voices. Joe, Roman, Cliff, Cherie, they're all strong enough to challenge me when necessary. Build a council of wolves you trust. Let them help carry the burden of power. Like you did? Celeste asked. Like I should have done centuries ago, Harold corrected. I was too proud, too convinced I knew best. It took me 200 years to learn that wisdom comes from listening, not commanding. His hand squeezed her shoulder gently. Learn from my mistakes. Be better than I was, than I am. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This ancient, powerful king admitting his failings, acknowledging his corruption, it was more human than she'd expected. I'll try, she said finally. That's all anyone can ask. Harold released her shoulder and stepped back. Rest this afternoon. Tomorrow we continue. And Celeste? His golden eyes held hers. "Thank you. For being careful today. For recognizing the danger, and pulling back when you could have pushed deeper. That restraint." He smiled slightly. "That's what gives me hope you won't become what they fear." Celeste spent the afternoon in the library, a massive room in the fortress's west wing that held centuries of pack history, magic theory, and strategic documentation. She needed to understand pack bonds better before tomorrow's training. Needed to see the history, the examples, the warnings written by wolves who'd walked this path before. She found a section dedicated to the Silver Moon Pack and started reading. The accounts were disturbing. Her ancestors had started with noble intentions, using their bond manipulation to unify fractured packs, to end wars, to create peace through connection. But over generations, the power had corrupted them. They'd begun forcing bonds on unwilling wolves, strengthening connections until pack members couldn't think independently, creating a massive empire where thousands of wolves were essentially puppets dancing on silver strings. And the people who'd tried to resist, who'd spoken out against the tyranny, they'd been corrected. Their bonds twisted until they believed their enslavement was freedom, until they thanked their oppressors for taking away their autonomy. Celeste felt sick reading it. This was her bloodline, her heritage. These monsters who'd worn her face and claimed righteousness while committing atrocities. Heavy reading. She looked up to find Cliff standing in the library entrance, concern evident on his scarred face. "I'm researching my ancestors, learning what they became." "And scaring yourself," Cliff observed, moving to sit across from her at the reading table. "That's good. Actually, fear of your own power is healthy. It's the wolves who aren't afraid of what they can do that you need to worry about." "How do you deal with it?" Celeste asked. "The power you have. You said you developed a new combat technique that's now taught everywhere. That kind of influence, that ability to shape how thousands of wolves fight. How do you not let it go to your head?" Cliff was quiet for a moment, considering. "I remember where I came from. I was born to a low-ranking Omega family in a backwater pack. Nobody expected anything from me. I was supposed to be a farmer or laborer, not a warrior. But I loved fighting, loved the strategy, the movement, the art of it. So I practiced. Every day. For years. And eventually, I got good enough that I developed something new." He leaned back in his chair, his expression distant with memory. "When the Royal Pack recruited me, when they started teaching my techniques across territories, I felt it, that pull, that voice saying, I was special, important, that I deserved recognition and deference because of my gift." He looked at Celeste. "And you know what kept me grounded?" "What?" "Remembering that my technique only works because hundreds of other fighters before me laid the groundwork. I didn't create from nothing. I built on their foundation, refined their ideas, combined elements they'd already discovered. My contribution was one piece of a much larger puzzle." He smiled. "Anytime I start thinking I'm special, I remember I'm just one link in a very long chain. Important. Maybe. But not irreplaceable, not unique. Just a wolf who worked hard and got lucky." Celeste absorbed that. "So I need to remember I'm not special? That my bloodline is just genetics, not destiny?" "No. You are special. Your bloodline gives you power most wolves can't imagine. But that power is a tool, not an identity. You're not your power. You're what you choose to do with it." Cliff gestured to the books spread across the table. "Your ancestors chose tyranny. You can choose differently. And that choice, that's what will define you. Not the magic in your blood, but the character in your heart." Before Celeste could respond, Toby burst into the library, his laptop under one arm, and his expression frantic. "We have a problem. A big one." "What kind of problem?" Celeste asked, already standing. "The Chainless just released a video. It's going viral across every pack territory. And He swallowed hard. "You're the star." He set his laptop on the table and turned it so they could see the screen. The video was well produced, professional lighting, clear audio, the kind of quality that required resources and planning. And at the center stood a wolf. Celeste didn't recognize female, maybe 40, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that burned with zealot intensity. Brothers and sisters, the wolf said, her voice carrying the cadence of a preacher, too long have we suffered under the tyranny of alphas. Too long have we accepted the chains of pack bonds as natural, as necessary, as good. But I tell you there is another way. The camera panned to show hundreds of wolves behind her, all of them watching with rapt attention. The white wolf has returned, the preacher continued. The one foretold. The silver moon heir who will break every chain and free us all. She has awakened at last, and even now, the Alpha King holds her captive, trying to corrupt her, to turn her into another tool of oppression. Oh no, Celeste breathed. The video cut to shaky footage clearly taken from a distance of Celeste training with Harold. The angle made it look like he was looming over her, threatening her, while she cowered. It was completely taken out of context. But to someone who didn't know better, "We call on the white wolf," the preacher shouted. "Reject your captors. Reject the false bonds of pack hierarchy. Come to us, and together we will build a new world. A world where every wolf is free, where no alpha commands, where chains are broken and autonomy reigns." The crowd behind her erupted in cheers, raising their fists and howling their agreement. The video ended. Silence filled the library. "That's bad," Cliff said finally. "That's really bad." "They're recruiting," Toby added, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "The video's been shared over 10,000 times already. Packs across 6 territories are seeing this. And the comments." He winced. "A lot of wolves are agreeing with them, saying pack bonds are oppressive, that alphas are tyrants, that you're their savior." Celeste felt the room spin. "I haven't even decided what I believe yet. How can they claim to know what I want? Because they don't care what you want." Priscilla's voice spoke from the library entrance, where she stood supported by a guard. "They care what you represent. You're a symbol to them. And symbols don't need agency, they just need to exist so others can project their desires onto them." Harold arrived moments later, Roman Terry at his heels, both of them looking grim. "You've seen it," Harold said, not a question. "Hard to miss," Celeste replied. "What do we do?" "I'm calling an emergency council meeting. The alphas from every major territory will want answers, assurances that the White Wolf isn't going to lead a revolution against pack structure." Harold's jaw was tight. "This accelerates everything. The winter solstice timeline just became meaningless. We have days, maybe a week, before the council demands you make a public declaration of your intentions." "I don't have intentions yet." Celeste's voice rose, frustration and fear bleeding through. "I'm still learning what I can do. I haven't even touched most of my abilities. How am I supposed to declare what I'll use them for when I don't fully understand them?" "Then you'd better learn fast," Harold said, not unkindly but with the weight of reality. "Because ready or not, the world just forced your hand. The Chainless have claimed you as their messiah. Now you either accept that role, reject it publicly, or—" He paused, and something dark flickered in his expression. "Or we eliminate the problem before it grows worse." "Eliminate?" Celeste asked. "You mean kill them? The Chainless?" "If necessary. They're rogues operating outside pack law, recruiting wolves away from their rightful alphas, spreading ideology that threatens the stability of our entire species. Yes, Celeste. If they force our hand, we'll eliminate them. All of them." "That's genocide," Celeste whispered, horror crawling up her spine. "That's survival," Harold countered. "The pack structure has kept wolves from savagery for millennia. Without it, we'd tear ourselves apart within a generation. The Chainless don't understand that. They think freedom means no rules, no hierarchy, no leadership. But all it really means is chaos and bloodshed, until the strongest wolf claims dominance through force rather than mutual agreement. Or maybe," Celeste said quietly, dangerous thoughts forming, "maybe there's a middle path. Maybe pack bonds don't have to be as strong as they are. Maybe alphas don't need absolute authority. Maybe—" "Don't," Harold said, his voice sharp as breaking glass. "Don't start down that path, questioning the fundamental structure of our society, sympathizing with those who want to tear it down. That's how good wolves become tyrants convinced their liberators." Celeste met his golden eyes, and for the first time since her awakening, she saw fear there. Not fear of her power. Fear of her choices. "The council meets in 3 days," Harold said finally. "You'll stand before them and declare your intentions. And I suggest you spend those 3 days deciding whether you want to be part of the solution, or whether you want to become the problem that needs to be eliminated. He left, Roman following, leaving Celeste in the library, with Cliff, Toby, Priscilla, and the weight of an impossible decision. He's scared, Priscilla observed. The Alpha King, who has ruled for 300 years without flinching, is frightened of what you might become. That should tell you something. What? Celeste asked. That I'm dangerous? That you have the power to change everything, Priscilla corrected. And change, real change, fundamental change, terrifies those who've built their lives on the current system, even when that system is flawed. The oracle moved closer. The question you must answer, child, is whether the pack bond system is flawed, and if it is, whether you're willing to risk everything to fix it. Chapter 8. The Weight of Choice. 3 days should have been enough time to figure out who she wanted to be. It wasn't. Celeste spent the first day locked in her room, poring over every text about pack bonds she could find. The more she read, the more complicated it became. Yes, the bonds provided stability, belonging, purpose, but they also gave alphas frightening levels of control. Emotional manipulation disguised as leadership, the ability to suppress dissent by simply commanding loyalty, the power to make someone feel shame for questioning authority. And the worst part? Most wolves never even realized they were being controlled. The bond felt natural to them. Like love, like family, like home. How could you convince someone they were enslaved when they genuinely believed they were free? Maybe they are free, Silver suggested tentatively. Maybe feeling connected and having purpose is its own kind of freedom. Or maybe that's exactly what a slave would say after being conditioned to love their chains, Celeste countered. The second day, she tried something dangerous. She asked Cherie, Cliff, Joe, and Toby about their bonds to Harold, how it felt, whether they'd ever resented it, whether they could imagine life without it. The answers were mixed. I love being bonded to the king, Cherie said without hesitation. Before I joined the royal pack, I was in a backwater territory with an alpha who was decent but uninspiring. The bond was there, but it was weak, barely noticeable. Then I came here, and Harold's bond. She struggled for words. It's like going from black and white to color. I feel stronger, more confident, more myself when I'm connected to him. He makes me better. But could you leave if you wanted to? Celeste pressed. Could you sever the bond and walk away? Cherie's expression shifted, confusion mixed with something that might have been fear. Why would I want to? That would be like cutting off my own arm. Technically possible, but why would anyone choose that? Because it's their arm, Celeste said quietly. And they should have the right to make that choice. Cliff's perspective was different. I remember what it was like being packless. 10 years of isolation, of having no anchor, no sense of belonging. The bond to Harold saved me from that emptiness. But, he paused, choosing words carefully. Sometimes I wonder if I'm loyal because I genuinely respect him, or because the bond makes me feel loyal. There's no way to separate my true feelings from the magical influence. And that bothers me more than I like to admit. Joe was blunt. The bond is a tool. Harold uses it to maintain order, ensure loyalty, create unity. Is it manipulation? Technically, yes. But so is leadership itself, convincing people to follow you, to trust your judgment, to sacrifice for the greater good. The question isn't whether the bond is manipulative, it's whether the manipulation is being used ethically. And you think Harold uses it ethically? Celeste asked. Mostly. He's not perfect, no alpha is. But compared to what he could do with that power? Yeah, I think he exercises remarkable restraint. Joe's sharp eyes studied Celeste. You're questioning everything. Good. You should. But be careful not to throw out valuable tools just because they can be misused. A knife can cut food or cut throats. The tool isn't the problem. The wielder is. Toby, predictably, had the most technical perspective. I've been analyzing pack bonds from a data standpoint, looking at crime rates, mental health statistics, societal stability across bonded packs versus rogue populations. And the numbers are clear: bonded wolves are happier, healthier, and more functional than rogues. By every measurable metric, the pack bond system works. Is it perfect? No. But it's better than the alternative. What if there's a third option? Celeste asked. Something between absolute pack bonds and complete isolation. Then you'd have to invent it, Toby replied. Because nobody's figured that out in thousands of years of wolf history. The third day, the day before the council meeting, Celeste did something she'd been avoiding. She went to find the chainless propaganda. Toby helped her access the hidden forums and encrypted channels where the movement organized. What she found was not what she'd expected. Yes, there were zealots, wolves who genuinely believed all hierarchy was evil, who wanted complete anarchy, who would happily burn down pack society without any plan for what came after. But there were also moderates. Wolves who'd been abused by tyrannical alphas, who'd suffered under bonds that were used as weapons, who simply wanted autonomy without being labeled traitors for it. One forum thread particularly caught her attention. Topic: Why I left my pack. User: Lone Wolf. 47. My alpha used the bond to suppress my objections when he decided to force arranged matings for genetic optimization. Every time I tried to speak up, I'd feel overwhelming shame and the compulsion to submit. The bond made me doubt my own judgment, made me think his decisions were right even when every instinct screamed they were wrong. I severed the bond and fled. Now I'm labeled a rogue, hunted, alone. But at least my thoughts are my own. User: Freerunner. Same. My alpha used the bond to make us feel grateful for terrible conditions. We were starving, our territory was being stripped of resources, but whenever someone complained, he'd pulse calming emotions through the bond until we forgot why we were angry. It wasn't until I left and the bond broke that I realized how badly we'd been gaslit. User: Truth Seeker. 99. Not all alphas are bad, but the system gives them the ability to be bad with no real oversight. How is that okay? How is giving someone magical control over other people's emotions and loyalty not asking for abuse? The thread went on for hundreds of posts. Horror stories of manipulation, abuse, gaslighting through magical means. And yes, some of it sounded exaggerated. Some of it was probably outright fabricated, but enough rang true that Celeste couldn't dismiss it entirely. The pack bond system worked well when alphas were ethical, but when they weren't, she was still reading when Harold found her. I've been looking for you, he said, his voice tight. He looked tired, no, exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. The council arrives tomorrow at dawn. We need to prepare your statement. I don't have a statement yet, Celeste replied, not looking away from the screen. Harold glanced at what she was reading, and his expression darkened. Chainless propaganda. That's what you've been doing? Filling your head with horror stories and conspiracy theories? Are they conspiracy theories if they're true? Celeste asked quietly. These are real wolves, Harold. Real experiences of abuse enabled by the pack bond system you defend. These are rogues who abandoned their responsibilities and now blame the system for their own weakness, Harold countered. Yes, some alphas abuse their power. Some humans abuse their authority too. Does that mean we should eliminate all leadership everywhere? Should we tear down every government, every organization, every structure simply because it can be misused? Maybe we should reform them instead of defending them blindly, Celeste shot back. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Harold moved closer, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw genuine anger in those golden eyes. You've been here less than a month. You've barely begun to understand the complexities of pack leadership. The delicate balance required to maintain order among thousands of territorial predators who would happily tear each other apart without structure. And now you think you know better? You think you've discovered some grand injustice that centuries of alphas have overlooked? I think centuries of alphas have benefited from the system exactly as it is, Celeste said, standing to face him. And people who benefit from injustice rarely see it as unjust. Careful. Harold's voice dropped to something dangerous. You're starting to sound like them, like the chainless, like wolves who would burn down everything and call it liberation. And you're starting to sound like every tyrant in history who justified their control by claiming it was necessary for stability. The words hung between them like a blade. Harold's jaw worked, and for a moment, Celeste thought he might actually strike her. But then the anger drained away, replaced by something worse, disappointment. I thought you understood, he said quietly. I thought you saw the danger of your power, the responsibility that comes with it. But you don't, do you? You're just another young wolf drunk on the possibility of change, convinced you can fix everything without understanding what you'd break in the process. Maybe what needs breaking should be broken, Celeste replied, even as part of her screamed that she was going too far, pushing too hard. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Harold turned toward the door. The council meets at dawn. You'll stand before them and declare your intentions. And I suggest you think very carefully about what you say, because the wrong words will get you killed. Not by me. I can't protect you from the council if they decide you're a threat. So choose wisely, Celeste. Choose survival. He left, the door closing behind him with a finality that felt like the end of something. We just made an enemy of the most powerful wolf alive, Silver said quietly. Was that smart? I don't know, Celeste admitted. But I couldn't keep pretending I agreed with him when I don't. Not about this. What do you believe? That was the question, wasn't it? What did she believe? Celeste spent the rest of the day walking the fortress, thinking, trying to sort through the tangled mess of conflicting information and loyalties. The pack bond system wasn't purely evil, she could see that. It provided real benefits, real stability, real connection for wolves who needed it, but it also enabled abuse on a scale that was horrifying. Magical control over emotions and loyalty meant well-intentioned alphas could guide their packs toward prosperity. But it also meant malicious alphas could gaslight entire populations into accepting their own oppression. The chainless weren't entirely wrong. But they also weren't entirely right. Complete freedom meant chaos. She'd read enough history to know that groups without leadership tore themselves apart. But complete control meant tyranny, even when the tyrant wore a benevolent face. So what was the answer? As the sun set on her last day before the council, Celeste found herself back on the high platform where Harold had taken her, the place where you could see the entire kingdom spread out below. Impressive view, isn't it? Celeste spun to find Priscilla standing at the platform's edge, her blind eyes somehow finding the horizon with perfect accuracy. How did you get up here? Celeste asked. The stairs were treacherous even for wolves with sight. I've been climbing these steps for 200 years, child. I could do it in my sleep. The oracle moved to stand beside her. You're troubled, torn between competing truths, unable to see a path forward that doesn't require betraying something you value. How do you know that? Because I've watched dozens of wolves stand exactly where you're standing, facing impossible choices, trying to be everything to everyone. Priscilla's gnarled hand found the stone wall. The prophecy says you have 4 paths, but there's a 5th option it doesn't mention. What? Refuse the game entirely. Don't choose the crown, the chainless, the forgotten, or solitary martyrdom. Instead, the oracle smiled. Build something new. A 6th path that didn't exist before you walked it. That's not helpful, Celeste said. That's just vague mystical nonsense. Is it? Or is it the only real answer to an impossible problem? Priscilla turned to face her fully. The pack bond system is flawed but functional. The chainless alternative is idealistic but unworkable. The Forgotten's vengeance is understandable but monstrous. And walking alone guarantees you tear yourself apart trying to please everyone. So don't choose any of them. Then what do I do? You tell the truth. Priscilla's voice was soft but firm. Tomorrow, when you stand before the council, you tell them exactly what you've discovered. That the system is broken, that reform is needed, that you will not be anyone's weapon, not Harold's, not the chainless, not the Forgotten's, that you're going to forge your own path. And anyone who tries to force you into their predetermined role will learn exactly how dangerous a free white wolf can be. Celeste's heart hammered. That will make me an enemy of everyone. Yes, it will. The crown will see you as a threat to stability. The chainless will see you as a traitor to their cause. The Forgotten will see you as a target for their vengeance. You'll stand alone against the world. Priscilla's blind eyes somehow met hers. But you'll stand with integrity, with autonomy, with the freedom to become whatever you choose rather than what others demand. And that, child, is the only path that doesn't end in your corruption. What if I fail? What if I can't build something new? What if I'm not strong enough? Then you'll fail spectacularly, but at least you'll fail as yourself, not as someone else's puppet. The oracle reached out, her hand finding Celeste's face with eerie precision. The prophecy says you're either salvation or extinction. But prophecies are just predictions, not laws. You have free will. You can be neither. You can be something the prophecy never anticipated, a wolf who refuses to play by anyone's rules, including fate's. Celeste closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision settling onto her shoulders. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. It's the fearless ones who become monsters. Priscilla's thumb traced her cheekbone. But don't let fear make you small. Don't let it convince you to submit, to choose the safe path, to become what others want rather than what you are. Tomorrow, you stand before powers that have ruled for centuries, and you tell them the age of absolute control is ending, that a new way is coming. Whether they like it or not, they'll try to kill me. Probably. Harold might even let them, if you push him far enough. His fear of what you could become might override his feelings for you. Priscilla smiled slightly. But I don't think they'll succeed. You're stronger than you know, child. And you have allies, wolves who believe in you, who will stand with you even against impossible odds. Don't underestimate the power of those who've decided you're worth fighting for. The oracle turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever you say or choose or do, don't apologize for it. The moment you apologize for taking up space, for having power, for refusing to submit, you've already lost. Own your choices, own your power. Own the fact that you exist, and the world has to deal with that, whether it wants to or not. She left, and Celeste was alone with the sunset and her thoughts. Silver, she called to her wolf. What do you think? I think we've never fit into anyone's expectations. We were born wolfless in an alpha family. We survived when we should have died. We awakened when we should have stayed sealed forever. Why would we start fitting into prophecies and predictions now? Silver's presence was warm, fierce, utterly certain. We've always been an anomaly. Let's embrace that. Celeste stayed on the platform until the stars came out, watching the kingdom below settle into night. Somewhere down there, wolves slept secure in their pack bonds, trusting their alphas to guide them. Somewhere else, rogues ran alone, cherishing their freedom despite the loneliness it brought. And in hidden places, the forgotten sharpened their blades and planned vengeance for crimes committed 800 years ago. They all wanted something from her, wanted her to choose their side, validate their beliefs, be their weapon or their savior or their scapegoat. But she was none of those things. She was Celeste Anderson, the wolfless girl who refused to die, the white wolf who refused to be caged, the silver moon heir who refused to become her ancestors. And tomorrow, she would tell them all exactly that. Consequences be damned. Dawn came with a cold wind that promised winter's approach. The council chamber was deep in the mountain, a massive cavern carved by ancient magic, with stone seats arranged in tiers so every alpha in attendance could see and be seen. Celeste stood at the center, in a circle carved into the floor where accused wolves had stood for centuries, stating their case or pleading for mercy. Above her, arranged in ascending rows, sat 47 alphas representing every major territory in the Wolf Kingdom. She recognized a few: her father, Alpha Greg, looking older and smaller than she remembered. Luna Diane beside him, her expression hungry for Celeste's failure. And on the highest tier, alone in a seat carved from obsidian, sat Harold Walls. The Alpha King looked down at her with no expression at all. No warmth, no affection, just cold assessment, like she was a problem he was calculating solutions for. Celeste Anderson, called Silver Moon, Harold's voice echoed through the chamber. You stand before the High Council on charges of inciting unrest, sympathizing with rogues, and questioning the fundamental structures that maintain our society. How do you plead? This was the moment. The choice that would define everything. Celeste took a breath, felt Silver's presence surge beneath her skin, and spoke with a voice that carried to every corner of the massive chamber. I plead guilty. To all of it. Shocked murmurs rippled through the assembled alphas. But, Celeste continued, I don't plead for mercy. Because I'm not sorry. Yes, I've questioned pack bonds. Yes, I've read chainless propaganda. Yes, I've discovered that the system you all benefit from is built on control and manipulation disguised as care and guidance. And yes, I think it needs to change. The murmurs became shouts. Several alphas were on their feet, calling for her immediate execution. Harold raised a hand, and silence fell instantly. You admit to sedition, to undermining pack authority, to potentially becoming the revolutionary the chainless claim you are. I admit to thinking for myself. Celeste shot back. To refusing to accept that the way things have always been done is the way they should always be done. To believing that wolves deserve more than magical control disguised as leadership. Careful. Harold's voice was soft but deadly. You're very close to declaring war on every pack in this chamber. I'm not declaring war. I'm declaring independence. Celeste met his gaze, refusing to flinch. I will not be the crown's weapon. I will not be the chainless messiah. I will not be the forgotten's target. I am my own wolf, and I will forge my own path. If that path leads to reforming the pack bond system, making it more equitable and less controlling, then so be it. If it leads somewhere else entirely, that's my choice to make. Not yours, not anyone's. You're a fool, Alpha Greg called from his seat. A child playing with power she doesn't understand. You think you can stand against all of us? Against centuries of tradition? I think I have to try. Celeste replied. Because if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life being what others demand, rather than who I am. And I've already lived 24 years as nothing. I'm done with that. Several alphas were calling for her death now, demanding Harold execute her immediately, before her influence spread, before she inspired more wolves to question their bonds. But Harold just sat there, golden eyes fixed on her, expression unreadable. Finally he spoke. You've made your choice, declared your independence, painted a target on your back that every faction will now aim for. He stood, and the sheer power radiating from him made several wolves bow their heads automatically. And I find myself impressed, frustrated, angry, but impressed. Your Majesty? One of the alphas questioned. Surely you can't be considering. I'm considering, Harold interrupted, that this young wolf just did something most of you lack the courage for. She told the truth. Uncomfortable, dangerous truth that challenges our power structure. And rather than execute her for it, I'm going to do something unprecedented. He descended from his obsidian throne, moving down the tiers until he stood at the edge of Celeste's circle. I'm going to let her try. Let her attempt to forge this mysterious new path she's convinced exists. Let her prove whether reform is possible, or whether the system must remain as it is. His golden eyes bore into hers. But make no mistake, Celeste. If you fail, if your reforms lead to chaos, to violence, to the dissolution of pack structure, I will stop you. By whatever means necessary. Even if it means killing you myself. I understand, Celeste said. And if you succeed? Harold smiled slightly. If you somehow manage to improve the pack bond system, to make it more equitable, without destroying its functionality, then I'll be the first to acknowledge I was wrong. That change was needed. That you were brave enough to see what I refused to. He extended his hand, that gesture that had become familiar between them. So what will it be, White Wolf? Will you accept this challenge? Or will you reconsider and choose a safer path? Celeste looked at his offered hand. Then at the 47 alphas watching her. Then at her father, who'd never believed in her. At her stepmother, who'd sealed her wolf. At the assembled powers who wanted her to be anything except herself. She didn't take Harold's hand. Instead, she shifted. Silver emerged in a blur of white fur and silver eyes, and she threw back her head and howled a sound of defiance and declaration that echoed through the mountain itself. I am Celeste Silvermoon. I am the White Wolf. I am neither your weapon nor your victim. And I will change this world or die trying. When she shifted back, she stood naked and unashamed in the center of the circle, meeting Harold's gaze with absolute certainty. I accept your challenge, she said. Now let's see if the pack bond system is strong enough to survive being questioned. Chapter 9. The Cost of Conviction. The aftermath of Celeste's declaration was immediate and brutal. Harold granted her exactly 1 week to develop a concrete proposal for pack bond reform, 1 week to turn her bold words into actionable policy that wouldn't tear apart the fabric of wolf society. If she failed, if she couldn't present something viable to the council, her independence would be revoked, and she'd be forced to choose between the crown's control or exile into territory where the chainless or forgotten would inevitably find her. 1 week, 7 days, to solve a problem that had persisted for millennia. "You're insane," Cherie said flatly when Celeste returned to the East Wing. "You just declared war on the entire power structure and somehow convinced them to give you time to dismantle it. That's either brilliant or suicidal. Possibly both." "Definitely both," Joe corrected, already pulling out maps and documents. "But if we're doing this, we're doing it right. You need data, precedent, historical examples of successful reform. You can't just walk into the council and say, 'Be nicer to your pack members.' You need specific, measurable changes with clear implementation strategies." Celeste collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion hitting her like a physical blow. The adrenaline of the council meeting was wearing off, leaving behind the terrifying reality of what she'd committed to. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with the problem," Cliff suggested, his massive frame somehow folding into a chair that looked too small for him. "What specifically is wrong with the current pack bond system?" Celeste thought about the forum posts she'd read. The horror stories of manipulation and abuse. The bonds give alphas too much control over emotions and loyalty. They can suppress dissent, gaslight entire packs, make people feel grateful for their own oppression. There's no oversight, no accountability, no way for pack members to question their alpha without the bond making them doubt their own judgment. "Okay. So the solution is," Toby prompted, fingers already flying across his keyboard. "Weaker bonds?" Celeste suggested. "Ones that provide connection without control? That offer belonging without surrendering autonomy?" "Tried that," Joe said, flipping through a thick historical tome. "The Broken Bonds War, 3 centuries ago. Several progressive alphas attempted to weaken their pack bonds voluntarily, hoping to create more egalitarian structures. Within 5 years, their packs were infiltrated by hostile forces, torn apart by internal conflict, and eventually absorbed by traditional packs with stronger bonds. The experiment was deemed a catastrophic failure." Celeste's heart sank. "So weakening the bonds doesn't work. Not without compensating for what's lost," Joe continued. "Strong bonds provide security, unity, rapid coordination during crises. Weaken them too much, and you lose those benefits. The challenge is finding the sweet spot, enough connection to maintain pack cohesion, but not so much control that alphas can abuse it." "What about consent?" Celeste asked. "What if pack members had to actively maintain their bonds? Renew them periodically? Give them the option to leave without being hunted as rogues?" Silence fell as everyone processed that. "That's..." Cliff started slowly. "That's actually radical. Pack bonds are currently permanent unless forcibly severed, which is agonizing and leaves both parties damaged. But if bonds required periodic renewal, if pack members could simply choose not to renew, alphas would lose their guaranteed power base." Cherie finished, her expression conflicted. "They'd have to actually earn loyalty, rather than rely on magical compulsion. Some would hate that. Others..." She paused. "Others might see it as validating, proving their leadership is genuine, rather than coerced. It would fundamentally restructure pack dynamics," Joe said, her analytical mind already racing through implications. "Alphas couldn't take loyalty for granted. They'd need to govern ethically, responsibly, transparently. Pack members would have real agency, real choice, but..." She looked at Celeste seriously. "It would also create instability. Packs could fragment overnight if enough members chose not to renew. Hostile alphas could poach trained warriors from rival packs by offering better conditions. The entire political landscape would shift." "Isn't that the point?" Celeste asked. "To create a system where alphas have to compete for loyalty, where pack members have actual power. Power and chaos are often the same thing," a new voice interjected. Everyone turned to find Harold standing in the doorway. No one had heard him approach, a reminder that even exhausted and distracted, the Alpha King was a predator first and foremost. "May I come in?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. This was his fortress, his pack, his rules. "Of course, Your Majesty," Cliff said, immediately standing and offering his chair. Harold waved him off and instead moved to lean against the wall, arms crossed, golden eyes fixed on Celeste. "I've been thinking about your declaration, about what you're trying to accomplish." His expression was unreadable. "And I've decided to help you." Celeste blinked. What? Not because I agree with you. I don't. I think you're naive and idealistic, and dangerously convinced you can fix something that isn't broken. Harold's voice was firm. But I also recognize that change is coming whether I want it or not. The chainless movement grows stronger every day. Young wolves are questioning bonds in ways previous generations never did. And if reform doesn't come from within the system, it will be forced from outside violently, chaotically, catastrophically. He moved closer to where Celeste sat, his presence overwhelming even when he was trying to be non-threatening. So I'm going to help you develop a proposal that might actually work. One that addresses your concerns about autonomy while maintaining the stability pack bonds provide. But I need you to understand something first. What? This will fail, Harold said bluntly. Not because the idea is bad, but because most alphas will never accept it. They'll see voluntary bonds as an attack on their authority, their power, their very identity as leaders. You'll present your proposal, and at least 30 of the 47 council alphas will vote against it, probably more. Then why help me develop it? Celeste asked. Because the 10 or 15 alphas who vote for it, the progressive ones, the ones who already govern ethically and have nothing to fear from voluntary bonds, they'll provide the proof of concept. They'll demonstrate that the system can work. And over time, over decades or centuries, the success of those reformed packs will pressure others to follow suit. Change doesn't happen overnight, Celeste. It happens one converted heart at a time. Harold's hand came to rest on her shoulder, that gesture that was becoming achingly familiar. You won't win next week, but you'll plant seeds, and those seeds will grow into the forest you're trying to create. The question is, are you patient enough to accept that? Or do you need immediate victory? Celeste thought about 18 years of suffering, of waiting, of enduring. I'm patient. I've had a lot of practice. Good. Harold's smile was slight, but genuine. Then let's build your proposal. Together. And we'll make it so compelling, so meticulously researched, so carefully structured that even alphas who hate the idea will have to admit it has merit. The next 7 days were a blur of research, debate, and relentless work. Harold kept his word. He helped. Not by imposing his own vision, but by challenging Celeste's assumptions, pointing out weaknesses in her arguments, forcing her to defend every claim with data and precedent. He brought in advisors, historians, legal experts. He arranged meetings with alphas known for progressive governance, letting Celeste learn from their experiences. And slowly, painfully, a proposal took shape. The Autonomy Accords. A framework for consensual pack bonds. The document was 50 pages long by the time they finished, dense with legal language, historical precedent, implementation timelines, and safeguards designed to prevent abuse. But the core principles were simple. 1. Voluntary renewal. All pack bonds must be renewed every 5 years. Pack members could choose not to renew without penalty, punishment, or being labeled rogues. 2. Informed consent. Before forming initial bonds, wolves must receive comprehensive education about what pack bonds entail, what control alphas have, and what alternatives exist. 3. Bond transparency. Alphas must publicly disclose how they use bond influence, emotional manipulation, loyalty compulsion, dissent suppression, creating accountability. 4. Safe exit. Wolves leaving packs must be given resources, territory access, and protection during transition periods, ensuring voluntary wasn't just a euphemism for starve as a rogue. 5. Oversight councils. Independent bodies composed of unbonded wolves would monitor pack bond usage, investigate abuse claims, and enforce ethical standards. It was ambitious, radical, and according to Joe's projections, had approximately a 15% chance of being adopted by even a minority of packs. But it was something, a concrete alternative to the current system. Proof that Celeste wasn't just tearing things down, she was trying to build something better. The night before the council meeting, Harold found Celeste in the library, making final revisions to the proposal's language. You should rest, he said, settling into the chair across from her. You need to be sharp tomorrow. I need this to be perfect. Celeste countered, her eyes burning from hours of reading. It will never be perfect. That's not how proposals work. They're starting points for negotiation, not final products. Harold reached across the table and gently closed her laptop. Come with me. I want to show you something. Too tired to argue, Celeste followed him through the fortress, and up to that high platform where they'd talked before, where the kingdom spread out below like a living map. Look at all of it, Harold said quietly. Every territory, every pack, every wolf living in relative peace. This is what the pack bond system has created. Not perfection, gods know there's injustice and suffering and abuse. But compared to what came before, he gestured to the dark wilderness beyond pack territories. Before pack bonds, wolves were constantly at war. Every alpha was a tyrant, ruling through fear and violence. There was no stability, no cooperation, no civilization, just endless cycles of dominance and rebellion and bloodshed. He turned to face her. The pack bond system isn't perfect, but it saved us from savagery. It created the foundation for everything we have now. So when you stand before the council tomorrow and propose tearing down that foundation, remember you're not just challenging tradition, you're gambling with the survival of our species. If you're wrong, if voluntary bonds lead to the chaos I fear, his golden eyes reflected the starlight, the consequences will be catastrophic. Are you prepared to carry that weight? No, Celeste admitted. I'm terrified I'm wrong. That I'll convince people to try something that destroys them. That my idealism will get wolves killed. She met his gaze. But I'm more terrified of doing nothing, of accepting the system as it is just because change is dangerous. Because if we never risk anything, we never improve anything. And this system needs improvement, Harold. You know it does. I know some alphas abuse their power, Harold conceded. But the solution isn't to eliminate power, it's to hold abusive alphas accountable. Execute the tyrants. Replace them with ethical leaders. Reform through enforcement, not revolution. And who decides which alphas are tyrants? Celeste challenged. You, the council, other alphas with their own agendas? That's not accountability, that's just different people with power deciding how power should be used. Real accountability comes from those being governed, not those doing the governing. You're describing democracy, Harold said. Which sounds noble until you realize most wolves don't understand the complexities of leadership. Don't have the training or knowledge to make informed decisions about pack governance, and will vote for whoever promises them the easiest life regardless of long-term consequences. So you think wolves are too stupid to govern themselves? I think wolves are exactly as wise as humans, which means half of them are below average intelligence, and most are too focused on immediate survival to consider long-term strategic planning. Harold's tone wasn't cruel, just pragmatic. Democracy works for humans because their leadership makes mistakes that can be corrected over election cycles. Wolf leadership mistakes mean territory loss, vulnerability to rogues, pack extinction. The stakes are too high for trial and error governance. Then we're at an impasse, Celeste said. You believe alphas should have absolute power checked only by other alphas. I believe pack members deserve agency even if they occasionally use it poorly. Neither of us is going to convince the other. No, Harold agreed. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the answer isn't one system for everyone. Maybe some packs operate with strong bonds and traditional hierarchy, while others experiment with voluntary bonds and distributed power. Let wolves choose which system they prefer. That's literally what my proposal suggests, Celeste pointed out. I know, which is why I helped you write it. Harold smiled, that slight, complicated expression that held layers of meaning. I don't agree with everything in your autonomy accords, but I agree with the principle of choice, of letting wolves vote with their paws by joining packs that match their values. That's the only path forward that doesn't require forcing everyone into a single model. He moved closer, and Celeste felt her pulse quicken despite her exhaustion. Tomorrow, you'll present your proposal. Many alphas will reject it. Some will call you dangerous, deluded, a threat to everything they've built. But a few, the ones who already govern with integrity, who have nothing to fear from voluntary bonds, they'll listen. They'll consider. And eventually, they'll try. His hand came up to cup her face. That's all you can ask for, Celeste. Consideration. The chance to prove your ideas can work. And if they do work, if reformed packs thrive while traditional ones struggle. He smiled. Then change happens naturally. Without revolution, without bloodshed. You really think it can work? Celeste asked quietly. I think you're either going to change the world or burn it down trying, Harold replied. And honestly, I'm curious to see which. He leaned in, and for a moment Celeste thought he might kiss her. But instead, he pressed his forehead to hers, an intimate gesture in wolf culture, signifying trust and connection without the permanence of a bond. Whatever happens tomorrow, he whispered. Whatever the council decides, whatever path you ultimately walk, know that I see you, Celeste. Not as a weapon or a threat or a problem to solve, just as a brave, stubborn, impossibly idealistic wolf trying to make things better. And that, his voice softened, that's worth something. Even if it fails. The council chamber felt even more oppressive the second time. Celeste stood in the center circle, the Autonomy Accords document clutched in her hands, while 47 alphas stared down at her, with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Harold sat in his obsidian throne, his face an unreadable mask. You have 1 hour, Harold announced. Present your proposal. Make your case. Convince us that voluntary pact bonds won't destroy everything our ancestors built. Celeste took a breath, felt Silver's presence surge beneath her skin, and began. She explained the research, the precedents, the safeguards. She acknowledged the risks, while emphasizing the benefits. She presented data, showing that ethical alphas lost nothing from voluntary bonds. Their pack members renewed enthusiastically, proving their leadership was genuine rather than magically coerced. She addressed every concern, every objection, every fear the council might have. And when she finished, silence filled the chamber. Then Alpha Greg stood. Her father, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. This proposal would destroy pack cohesion, allow enemies to poach our strongest warriors, create instability that rogues would exploit. It's naive, dangerous, and fundamentally incompatible with wolf nature. I agree, another alpha called out. Voluntary bonds are a fantasy. Wolves need strong leadership, not choices that will overwhelm them. The system works as it is, a third added. Why fix what isn't broken? One by one, alphas voiced their opposition. Celeste counted 20, 30, 35 votes against her before anyone spoke in her favor. Then a female alpha stood, one Celeste didn't recognize, from a western territory. I disagree with my colleagues. My pack operates with already weak bonds because I believe in earning loyalty. This proposal formalizes what I already practice. I vote to adopt it. Another alpha rose. I've seen the abuse weak leadership enables. This proposal creates accountability I've long advocated for. I support it. A third. A fourth. Slowly, the supporters revealed themselves. Not many, but enough to matter. When the final votes were tallied, the result was clear. 32 alphas rejected the Autonomy Accords. 15 alphas endorsed them for trial implementation in their territories. It wasn't a victory. But it wasn't complete defeat either. Harold stood, his presence commanding immediate silence. The Autonomy Accords will be implemented on a voluntary basis by those territories whose alphas voted to adopt them. After 5 years, we will reconvene to evaluate results. If reformed packs demonstrate equal or greater stability, prosperity, and security compared to traditional packs, the proposal will be revisited for broader adoption. If they fail. His golden eyes found Celeste. Then voluntary bonds will be permanently prohibited, and this experiment will never be attempted again. Agreed, Celeste said, though her voice shook slightly. This council is adjourned. Harold's gaze swept the chamber. And let it be known, the White Wolf walks free. She is under my protection. Any alpha who moves against her, who attempts assassination or sabotage, will answer to me personally. Is that understood? The assembled alphas nodded, though several looked murderous. As the council dispersed, Celeste remained in the center circle, processing what had just happened. 15 packs, 15 territories willing to try her proposal. It was more than she'd hoped for. Less than she'd wanted. But it was a start. Congratulations, Joe said, appearing at her side. You just changed the world. A little bit, maybe. Assuming those 15 packs don't immediately collapse into chaos, Celeste replied. Assuming that, yes, Joe smiled slightly. But you gave wolves something they've never had before, a real choice about how they're governed. That matters. Even if the experiment fails. Cherie, Cliff, and Toby joined them, all wearing expressions of exhausted pride. You were amazing, Cliff said. Standing up there, defending your ideas against 47 alphas who wanted to tear you apart. That took courage. Or stupidity, Celeste muttered. Sometimes those are the same thing, Cherie pointed out. But either way you survived. The council didn't execute you. Harold's still protecting you. And 15 packs are going to try your system. That's a win. It doesn't feel like one, Celeste admitted. Wins rarely do, Toby said. Not immediately. But give it time. Let those 15 packs prove the concept. And then, he grinned. Then we change the world for real. But as they left the council chamber, none of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows. A wolf, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that burned with zealot intensity. The same wolf from the chainless propaganda video. And she was smiling. Because the white wolf had just done exactly what the chainless needed her to do, proven that reform from within was possible. That voluntary bonds could work. That alphas could be convinced to surrender their absolute power. Now all they had to do was make sure those 15 experimental packs succeeded, by any means necessary, even if helping required eliminating obstacles, silencing opposition, ensuring the reformed packs thrived while traditional packs mysteriously struggled. The white wolf thought she was forging her own path. She had no idea she was walking directly into the Chainless's plan. Chapter 10. The Fire That Forges. 6 months later, the first experimental pack fell 3 weeks after implementing the autonomy accords, not through internal collapse or voluntary bond failure. Through assassination. Alpha Javier Cohen, the same trial master who'd once tried to kill Celeste with silver and riddles, had been one of the 15 who voted to adopt her proposal. His pack in the Eastern Territories had transitioned smoothly to voluntary bonds, with a 97% renewal rate that proved his leadership was genuinely respected rather than magically coerced. Then someone poisoned him. Slow-acting, untraceable. He died screaming, his pack bonds dissolving in agony, leaving 200 wolves suddenly adrift and vulnerable. Within days, a neighboring traditional pack absorbed them, claimed it was mercy, protection, necessary intervention to prevent chaos. But Celeste knew better. This was sabotage. A message to the other 14 experimental packs. Reform will get you killed. We need to investigate, she insisted to Harold, pacing his war room where maps of all pack territories covered the walls. Red pins marked the experimental packs. Black pins marked traditional ones, and a single white pin marked where Javier had died. Find out who's behind this. Protect the other reformers before they all die? Harold interrupted, his voice cold. I'm already investigating. My best agents are tracking the poison source, interviewing witnesses, analyzing every piece of evidence. But Celeste. He turned from the maps to face her. You need to prepare for the possibility that this experiment is doomed. That forces more powerful than either of us anticipated are moving to ensure reform fails. The Chainless, Celeste said. It wasn't a question. Or the forgotten. Or traditional alphas who see reform as existential threat, or some combination of all three. Harold moved closer, and she could see the exhaustion in his ancient eyes, the weight of trying to hold together a kingdom that was fracturing along ideological lines. The moment you presented the autonomy accords, you made every experimental pack a target. Everyone with an agenda sees them as either obstacles to eliminate or tools to exploit. So what do I do? Celeste asked, hating how small her voice sounded. You make a choice. Harold's hand came up to grip her shoulder. You can keep pushing forward, keep defending the experimental packs, keep fighting for reform, and watch more alphas die for your ideals. Or you can withdraw the proposal. Admit the experiment failed. Return to the traditional system and accept that change isn't possible right now. That's not a choice. That's surrender. Sometimes surrender is wisdom, Harold replied. Knowing when to retreat, regroup, try again when conditions are more favorable, that's not weakness, Celeste. It's strategy. Before she could respond, Toby burst into the war room, his laptop clutched to his chest and his face pale. You need to see this. Now. He pulled up a video, another Chainless broadcast, but this one was different. No zealot preacher, no crowd of converts. just a single wolf speaking directly to camera with frightening calm. The wolf was male, middle-aged, with scars that suggested decades of combat experience. And when he spoke, his voice carried authority that made even Harold tense. "My name is John Daniels. Former Royal Guard. Former believer in the pack bond system. Former slave to Alpha Authority." His eyes bored through the screen. "I'm speaking today to the 14 experimental packs who still live. The ones who adopted the White Wolf's proposal and hoped for something better." Celeste's blood ran cold. "Alpha Javier's death was not random," John continued. "It was a message from traditional powers who fear your success. They will kill every reformer Alpha. They will absorb your packs. They will prove that voluntary bonds don't work by ensuring they can't work through systematic elimination." He leaned closer to the camera. "But you have another option. The Chainless offer protection. Join us. Sever your bonds entirely. Embrace true freedom, not the half measure the White Wolf proposed. We have the resources, the warriors, the territory to keep you safe while traditional packs crumble under the weight of their own tyranny." "No," Celeste whispered. "No, this is—" "We know the White Wolf meant well," John continued, and there was something like pity in his expression. "She tried to reform the system from within. Noble, naive, and ultimately futile, because you cannot reform something fundamentally corrupt. You can only burn it down and build anew." His voice hardened. "So choose, experimental packs. Join the Chainless and live free. Or maintain your compromise bonds and die like Javier." The clock is ticking. The video ended. Harold's curse was creative and vicious. "They're using your reform as a recruitment tool, proving traditional packs are hostile, then offering themselves as the only alternative. Its brilliant strategy let you do the hard work of convincing alphas that bonds are flawed, then swoop in when those alphas are vulnerable and desperate." "I didn't mean for this," Celeste said, her voice shaking. "I was trying to help. Trying to give wolves choice without destroying pack structure entirely. I know. But intention doesn't matter when the consequences are catastrophic." Harold moved to the maps, studying them with the tactical mind that had kept him alive for 3 centuries. If even one experimental pack joins the Chainless, it validates their entire ideology, proves that reform is impossible, that the only path is complete rejection of pack bonds. And once that door opens— He didn't finish. Didn't need to. "How many do you think will join them?" Celeste asked. "If I were in their position? Watching my fellow reformers die, knowing traditional packs want me dead, offered protection by the only force that seems to care?" Harold's expression was grim. "All of them. Within a month, all 14 will be chainless. Your experiment will become their revolution, and the council will blame you for everything that follows." The door crashed open, and Roman Terry stumbled in, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "Your Majesty, we're under attack. The fortress is breached." "How?" Harold demanded, already moving. "This fortress has defenses that have held for centuries." "Who?" "The Forgotten," Roman gasped. "Hundreds of them. They infiltrated through the supply tunnels, disabled the wards from inside. They're killing everyone they can find. And there." He looked at Celeste, raw fear in his eyes. "They're asking for the White Wolf. They want her alive." Harold's shift was instantaneous human to massive silver wolf in a blur of motion. "Stay here," his mental voice commanded through the alpha authority that made even Celeste's independent spirit want to obey. "Bar the door. Don't open it for anyone except me." Then he was gone, Roman following, leaving Celeste alone in the war room with Toby. "We need to run," Toby said immediately, already packing his laptop. "If the Forgotten want you alive, that means torture, not execution. They'll make you pay for every crime your ancestors committed. They'll—" "I'm not running," Celeste interrupted. She could hear the sounds of battle now, snarls, screams, the clash of combat echoing through the fortress. How many were dying? How many Royal Pack members were bleeding out because the Forgotten wanted revenge on her bloodline? "We can fight," Silver growled in her mind. "We're stronger now. 6 months of Harold's training. We're not the weak wolf we were. We're one wolf against hundreds," Celeste replied. "We die in minutes. Then we die fighting. Better than hiding while others suffer for our existence." Celeste closed her eyes, feeling the weight of every choice that had led here. her declaration of independence, her proposal for reform, her refusal to choose a side, convinced she could forge her own path. And now people were dying because she'd been too proud to accept that some problems couldn't be solved by one idealistic wolf with good intentions. "I need to surrender," she said quietly. "What?" Toby stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "They'll kill you. Slowly. Painfully. After making you watch everyone you care about die first. Maybe. But if I surrender, they'll stop attacking. They'll take me and leave the fortress." She moved toward the door. "How many Royal Pack members are worth my life? 10? 20? All of them?" "Harold will never allow it," Toby said. "He'll fight the Forgotten to the last wolf before he lets them take you." "I know. Which is why I'm not asking his permission." She opened the door before Toby could stop her. The hallway was chaos. Blood painted the walls. Bodies, both Forgotten attackers and Royal Guard defenders, littered the floor. And advancing toward the war room came a group of 20 wolves, all of them bearing the marks of the Forgotten, ritual scars, silver weapons, and eyes that promised vengeance. Leading them was a female wolf Celeste recognized from her research Priscilla's warnings about the third faction. Ernesto Hendricks. Not related to Priscilla despite sharing a surname. This Hendricks was young, maybe 30, with hate carved into every line of her scarred face. "The white wolf emerges," Ernesto said, her voice carrying satisfaction and rage in equal measure. "I thought we'd have to burn through the entire fortress to find you. How considerate." "I'm here," Celeste said, forcing her voice steady. "You wanted me. You have me. Call off your attack, leave the fortress, take me wherever you want, just stop killing people who have nothing to do with this." Ernesto laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "People who have nothing to do with this. They chose to protect you. They chose to serve the king who shelters Silvermoon filth. They chose their side, and now they pay the price." She moved closer, her silver blade catching the dim light. "But you're right about one thing. We do want you alive. The elders have plans, 800 years of planning actually. Waiting for a Silvermoon heir to emerge so we could finally complete our vengeance." "What vengeance?" Celeste demanded. "Your people were oppressed centuries ago by wolves who've been dead for generations. I'm not my ancestors. I haven't hurt anyone. Why punish me for crimes I didn't commit? Because you carry their blood. Their power. The potential to become exactly what they were." Ernesto's blade pressed against Celeste's throat. "And because the only way to ensure the Silvermoon Pack never rises again is to end the bloodline, permanently, starting with you." "Then do it," Celeste said. "Kill me. Right here, right now. But first call off your attack. Swear you'll leave the fortress and never return. My life for theirs." Ernesto studied her, confusion flickering in those hate-filled eyes. "You'd die for them? For wolves you barely know? For a king who only values you for your power?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm tired," Celeste said honestly. "Tired of running. Tired of fighting. Tired of being a symbol that everyone wants to claim or destroy. If my death ends this, if it saves even one life, then—" She closed her eyes. "Then maybe my existence wasn't completely worthless." Silence stretched. Celeste waited for the blade to bite deep, for the pain that would signal her end. Instead, Ernesto pulled the blade back. "No." Celeste's eyes snapped open. "What?" "I said no. You don't get to die a martyr. Don't get to paint yourself as noble sacrifice." Ernesto's expression twisted. "Your ancestors were tyrants who thought their power justified anything. And here you are, convinced your death will solve everything, still thinking you're the center of the universe, still believing you get to make choices that affect everyone." She sheathed her blade. "You want to atone for Silvermoon crimes? Then live. Live and watch as we dismantle everything your bloodline tried to build. Watch as the experimental packs join the chainless. Watch as traditional packs fracture under pressure. Watch as the entire pack bond system collapses into the chaos your reform helped create." Ernesto leaned close. "Die, and you're a martyr. Live, and you're a cautionary tale. Guess which one destroys your legacy more thoroughly. You're letting me go? I'm letting you suffer." Ernesto turned to her forces. "Fall back. Mission accomplished. The white wolf knows her place now. knows that all her good intentions, all her idealism, all her reform proposals have accomplished nothing except making everything worse. That's better than any death we could give her. The Forgotten withdrew, leaving Celeste standing in a hallway filled with bodies and the acrid smell of blood. And she realized with crushing clarity Ernesto was right. She'd wanted to help, wanted to give wolves choice and agency and freedom from manipulation. Instead, she'd created chaos, given the chainless recruitment material, made experimental packs targets, started a domino effect that was tearing apart the stability Harold had maintained for centuries. She'd changed the world, all right. Changed it for the worse. No, Silver snarled. We tried. We fought for something better. That matters. Does it? Celeste asked. Does trying matter when the results are catastrophic? She heard footsteps and looked up to see Harold approaching, back in human form, covered in blood and fury. What did you do? He demanded. The Forgotten are retreating. Why? Because I offered to surrender. They refused. Said watching me suffer through the consequences of my choices was better revenge than killing me. Celeste's voice was hollow. And they're right, Harold. Everything I've done, every choice I've made since awakening has made things worse. The experimental packs are dying or fleeing to the chainless. Traditional packs are more entrenched than ever. The kingdom is fracturing. And it's all my fault. Yes, Harold said bluntly. It is. The words hit like a physical blow. You were naive, Harold continued, his golden eyes hard. Convinced you could revolutionize a system that had worked for millennia, convinced your good intentions were enough. You didn't listen to warnings, didn't consider unintended consequences, didn't accept that sometimes the status quo exists because all alternatives are worse. I know, Celeste whispered. I know, and I can't fix it. I don't know how to fix it. You can't. The damage is done. Harold moved closer. But you can stop making it worse. Withdraw the autonomy accords. Publicly renounce reform. Tell the experimental packs to return to traditional bonds before they're all slaughtered or absorbed by the chainless. Accept that you were wrong. And then what? Go back to the system that enables abuse? Pretend pack bonds don't need reform? Yes, because imperfect stability is better than perfect chaos. Harold's hand gripped her shoulder, and his touch was surprisingly gentle despite his harsh words. I told you this would happen. Told you that change is dangerous, that good intentions aren't enough, that you'd learn through suffering what wisdom should have taught you painlessly. And now you have learned. The question is, will you accept the lesson, or keep insisting you know better? Celeste wanted to argue. Wanted to defend her choices, her ideals, her conviction that reform was necessary despite the costs. But how could she? Standing in a hallway filled with bodies, how could she claim moral superiority when her proposal had gotten people killed? I'll withdraw the accords, she said finally. I'll tell the experimental packs to return to traditional bonds. She swallowed hard. I'll admit I was wrong. Good. Harold's hand moved from her shoulder to cup her face. And then you'll start learning how leadership actually works. Not through revolution and grand gestures, but through slow, careful change that doesn't tear everything apart. I'll teach you, personally, if you're willing to listen this time. Why? Celeste asked. After everything I've done, the chaos, the deaths, the damage to your kingdom, why would you still want to teach me? Harold's expression softened, and for the first time since the attack, she saw something other than anger in his eyes. Because despite everything, despite the catastrophic failure of your experiment, you tried. You saw injustice and refused to accept it. You risked everything for what you believed was right. That kind of courage, misguided as it was, is rare. And with proper guidance, with wisdom tempering that idealism. His thumb traced her cheekbone. With time, you could become the leader you thought you already were. But only if you're willing to learn from this failure rather than repeat it. I'm willing, Celeste said. Teach me. 1 year later. The council chamber felt different now. Less hostile. More resigned. Celeste stood in the center circle again. But this time she wasn't proposing revolution. She was reporting failure. The autonomy accords experiment has concluded, she announced, her voice steady despite the shame burning in her chest. Of the 15 experimental packs, 6 returned to traditional bonds voluntarily. 5 were absorbed by traditional packs after their alphas died under suspicious circumstances. And 4. She paused. 4 joined the chainless movement and no longer recognized council authority. Murmurs rippled through the assembled alphas, some satisfaction at being proven right, some genuine sadness at the loss. The experiment failed, Celeste continued. Reform from within proved impossible under current conditions. The autonomy accords are hereby withdrawn permanently. I was wrong to propose them, wrong to believe change could happen without catastrophic consequences. And this part was hardest. I apologize. To the alphas who died, to the packs who suffered, to everyone affected by my naive idealism. Silence filled the chamber. Then Alpha Greg stood, her father, who'd voted against her, who'd never believed in her. The White Wolf has learned wisdom through suffering. Perhaps there's hope for her yet. Other alphas nodded agreement. The relief in the room was palpable. The dangerous revolutionary had been tamed, the threat neutralized, the system preserved. Harold stood last. The council accepts the White Wolf's apology and withdrawal of the autonomy accords. She will remain under my protection and tutelage, learning proper governance and leadership. This matter is closed. As the council dispersed, Celeste remained in the center circle, processing everything that had happened over the past year, the deaths, the failures, the slow, painful acceptance that she'd been wrong about nearly everything. But as she turned to leave, she noticed something. A small group of wolves watching from the chamber entrance, not council members but observers. Young wolves. Mostly. Their eyes weren't filled with satisfaction at her failure. They were filled with understanding, recognition, hope. Because even though her experiment had failed, even though she'd withdrawn her proposal and admitted defeat, she'd proven reform was possible. That alphas could be convinced to voluntarily reduce their power. That wolves wanted more agency, even if the system wasn't ready to give it to them yet. The seeds she'd planted hadn't grown into the forest she'd hoped for. But they'd grown into something. And years from now, decades from now, when conditions were right, someone else would try again, would learn from her mistakes, would succeed where she'd failed. Change didn't happen overnight. Harold had been right about that. But it did happen. Slowly and painfully, one converted heart at a time. Ready to start your real education? Harold asked, appearing beside her. Yes, Celeste replied. Teach me everything. How to lead without destroying. How to reform without revolution. How to make change that lasts. It'll take years, decades probably, and you'll make more mistakes along the way. I know. But I'll learn from them this time. She looked up at him, at this ancient king who'd been patient enough to let her fail and wise enough to catch her when she fell. Thank you. For not giving up on me. For believing I could be better. I didn't believe you could be better, Harold said with a slight smile. I believed you would be better. Because you're too stubborn to stay broken. Too proud to accept defeat as final. And too brave to stop trying just because the first attempt failed. His hand took hers. Those qualities will make you a terrible student and an exceptional leader. Eventually, Celeste agreed. They left the council chamber together, king and student, mentor and apprentice, 2 wolves walking the long path toward wisdom that only failure could teach. And in the shadows, watching them go, wolves who'd witnessed her declaration and her defeat whispered among themselves about how the White Wolf had tried, had failed, had admitted her mistakes and chosen to learn rather than run, about how maybe, someday, when she was ready, they'd follow her. Not because of prophecy or bloodline or magical compulsion, but because she'd proven she was willing to fail for what she believed in. And that kind of integrity, flawed, human, devastatingly honest, was rarer than any power. The White Wolf's revolution hadn't happened. Not yet. But the seeds were planted. The questions were asked. The possibility was proven. And when the time was right, when the next generation of wolves grew tired of chains disguised as care, they'd remember the one who tried first, who failed publicly, who stood back up and kept learning anyway, because revolution doesn't need martyrs or messiahs. It needs survivors who refuse to stop trying. And Celeste Anderson, the wolfless girl who'd refused to die, the white wolf who'd refused to be caged, the reformer who'd refused to stop learning, was exactly that. A survivor. And survivors change the world. Eventually. Epilogue. 5 years later. The Fortress Library had become Celeste's second home. She spent hours here daily, studying pack history, legal precedent, leadership theory, and the countless texts Harold insisted she master before he'd consider her education complete. She was reading about the Broken Bonds War, that failed reform attempt from centuries ago, when Toby found her. "You need to see this," he said, pulling up a video on his laptop. It was a chainless broadcast. But not the zealot preaching or revolutionary rhetoric she'd expected. Instead, it showed the 4 experimental packs that had joined them 5 years ago. They were thriving, happy, functional, living without pack bonds entirely, organizing through voluntary cooperation rather than magical compulsion, creating communities where leadership was earned through respect rather than commanded through alpha authority. It wasn't chaos. It was working. "The chainless succeeded where you failed," Toby said quietly. "They proved voluntary organization is possible. That wolves don't need bonds to have community." "No," Celeste replied, watching the video carefully. "They proved something else, that multiple systems can work simultaneously. Traditional packs function well for wolves who want strong bonds. Reformed packs work for those who want moderate bonds, and chainless communities work for those who want no bonds at all." She smiled slightly. Harold was right. The answer isn't one system for everyone. It's letting wolves choose which system suits them. "So your experiment didn't fail," Toby said. "It just succeeded differently than you expected." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to salvage some meaning from catastrophic failure." Celeste closed her book. "Either way, I learned what I needed to learn. And when I'm ready, when I've proven I understand leadership well enough to wield power responsibly, I'll try again. Differently. Wiser. Better." "When will that be?" "Harold says another 5 years minimum. Possibly 10. She laughed softly. "Turns out, becoming a decent leader takes longer than becoming a powerful one. And you're okay with that? With waiting that long?" Celeste thought about 18 years of being nothing, of waiting, enduring, surviving. "I've had practice being patient. What's another few years?" The door opened, and Harold entered, looking exhausted from whatever council business had occupied his day. But when he saw Celeste, his expression softened. "Still studying? You know rest is important too," says the king who works 18-hour days, Celeste pointed out. "Fair point." He moved to sit across from her. "I have news. 2 more traditional packs have contacted me privately. They're interested in implementing modified versions of your autonomy accords. Not the full voluntary system, but elements of it. More transparency, easier exit processes, regular renewals at longer intervals." Celeste's heart skipped. "Really? Really? The council won't approve it officially, but individual alphas are experimenting quietly, learning from your failures, and the chainless's successes. Change is happening, Celeste. Slowly, carefully. Exactly the way it should." Harold's golden eyes held hers. "You planted seeds 5 years ago. Now they're beginning to sprout. Not the forest you imagined, but growth nonetheless. Is that your way of saying I was right to try?" "It's my way of saying you were wrong about almost everything except the fundamental premise that the system needed reform. Your methods were disastrous. Your timing was terrible. Your execution was naive." He smiled. "But your heart was in the right place. And that counts for something." "High praise from the Alpha King," Celeste said dryly. "The highest, because I don't give false comfort." Harold stood, offering his hand. "Come walk with me. I want to discuss your next phase of training. You're ready to start learning pack bond manipulation directly, not to use it, but to understand it well enough to regulate it ethically when you eventually hold power." "When I hold power?" Celeste asked as they left the library. "Not if?" "Not if. You're too stubborn to quit, too intelligent not to learn, and too brave not to try again. Eventually 5 years, 10, 20 you'll be ready. And when you are, I'll step aside. Let you prove that a Silver Moon heir can lead without becoming a tyrant." His hand squeezed hers. "I've been Alpha King for 300 years. I'm tired, Celeste. Ready for someone else to carry the burden. and I can't think of anyone I'd rather pass it to than a wolf who failed spectacularly and learned humility from the experience. Celeste stopped walking, staring at him in shock. You want me to be Alpha Queen? Eventually. After you've completed your training. After you've proven you can lead without destroying. After you've demonstrated that idealism tempered by wisdom is the most powerful force in the world. Harold's expression was serious. The prophecy said you'd either save wolfkind or destroy it. I believe you'll do the former. But only if you learn patience, strategy, the difference between revolution and reform. And if I fail again, then we'll deal with that failure too, together. Because that's what mentors do. They catch you when you fall, help you learn from mistakes, and push you to try again smarter. His golden eyes held something that might have been affection, might have been more. You're not alone anymore, Celeste. You have allies, teachers, wolves who believe in your potential even when you doubt yourself. Use us. Learn from us. And when you're ready, he gestured to the vast kingdom visible from the fortress windows. Change the world. Properly this time. Celeste looked out at the territories spread below. At the traditional packs and reformed packs and chainless communities all coexisting in tense but functional balance. At a world that was slowly, painfully, learning to accommodate multiple ways of being wolf. It wasn't the revolution she'd imagined, but it was progress. Real, lasting progress built on failure and learning. And the willingness to try again despite catastrophic mistakes. I'll need help, she said finally. Can't do it alone. You'll have it, Harold promised. From me, from your friends, from every wolf who's decided you're worth following despite your spectacular capacity for failure. That's not very inspiring. No. But it's honest. And honesty brutal. Uncomfortable honesty is what you need right now. Not comfort. Not false praise. Just truth and the support to handle it. Celeste leaned against him, feeling the solid weight of his presence, the steadiness that had kept the kingdom together for 3 centuries. Thank you. For not killing me when you probably should have. For teaching me instead of giving up. For believing I could be better even when I proved I was terrible. You're welcome. Harold's arm came around her shoulders. Now come on. We have work to do. A kingdom to maintain, reforms to carefully implement, and a chronically idealistic student to prevent from burning down everything she touches while she learns proper leadership. They walked together through the fortress, teacher and student, king and heir, 2 wolves navigating the impossibly complicated path between revolution and restoration. The White Wolf story wasn't over. It was only beginning. And this time armed with wisdom earned through failure, humility learned through catastrophe, and patience forged in fire, she might actually succeed. Eventually. Thank you for following Celeste's journey, from wolfless outcast to revolutionary reformer, learning the hard lessons of leadership through failure and perseverance.